Directing traffic, gonna go deep, has a man deep, it is caught for the touchdown, Corey Davis!
What does he do? Attacks leverage. If he's outside leverage, he doesn't want you to beat him outside. So stem towards him, hold him outside, stab outside. Drive face, full cell vertical, get into the blind spot, and he absolutely burns him. Corner is lost. He literally has no idea where Wilson is.
Long, fast, how he approaches the game, how dedicated he is to football. He's ridiculously good, man. You have to be ecstatic.
This is actual film. This is actual football talk. It's a football show. We're supposed to talk football, not storylines.
What is up, everybody? I'm actually a little bit nervous to do a live stream, which is a little bit weird for me. Nania, I'm still waiting for you to put a little intro with yourself in there because I feel kind of bad now that I'm doing it without you in there because you've been helping out the show a lot. But what is up, my man?
There is a lot that is up right now. I mean, I kind of feel bad that you weren't here to be at MetLife this week because I was there and it was. I mean, I haven't been to a ton of Jets games, and I don't regularly go, but probably been to about 10 or so. And of those, this is by far the best game that I've been to and the best crowd that I've been a part of. It was crazy, and this is potentially a big turning point for this team. So it's an exciting time.
Yeah, I'm getting a lot of messages, and I appreciate everybody who's been in here early, and I'm going to definitely get to the chat. Like I said, I'm going to probably stay until a little bit later than I'm supposed to because I want to talk to all of you. I want to go over the Bengals game, the Steelers game, just a little bit. I'm going to do it like lightning round style, and Nani is just going to interrupt me if you need to interrupt me because I spent the last 3 days just like binge watching films. So usually I take like a good day or two to really like digest it and watch it slowly. But like I had to at least watch those games in the film version as well because, you know, obviously watching on my phone from Europe, it's just not the same. You don't really get the all 22 angles and stuff like that. And obviously I want to build my own opinions of some of those plays, but obviously exciting to talk about the Jets winning 2 games. And again, a lot of people are saying like, Joe, listen, at the end of the day, if they are losing again, you have to go back to Italy. So it's a bullet I'm willing to bite for everybody here. I'm really excited. I just landed on Sunday during the Dolphins game, which I was trying to watch that first quarter for like an hour and a half during like getting up my luggage and all that stuff. But nonetheless, really exciting game there. And now tomorrow morning I leave for Chicago, and I'm going to Chicago to watch the Bears and the Commanders. If our one viewer, I'm sorry if I forget your name. I think it's Matt McCormick. I think it is. If he's in here, if I see him, I'll show him the Winnie the Pooh costume. I don't know if I told you about that situation, Nani. Did I not tell you about the Winnie the Pooh?
I think I did hear you describe it on the stream. You tweeted about it, but we're gonna need that posted for sure.
Yeah, I'll be taking a picture. I have it next to me. It's really it's like a unisex onesie that was like $40, but nonetheless, I told Matt that if the Jets were 3-2 or better by the time I went to Chicago, which I didn't necessarily think they would be, but to be completely transparent with the AFC North, that I would wear a Winnie the Pooh costume to the Bears game. And the Jets, what do you know, are 3-2. So I watched the end result of the game, and right from there, I ordered a Winnie the Pooh costume on Amazon. So I'm hoping I don't get jumped in Chicago, but we'll figure that out. But if Matt's in here, I'll at least put the hood on. But nonetheless, let's get to the chat a little bit. Neil, looking forward to Joe's insights on the Jets-Dolphins game. Jets-Dolphins, Steelers, Bengals. I'm going to do those really, really quickly. I'm sure Nania, Kyle, a lot of people have watched it even in more depth than I did because, like, really, Nania, like we've talked about this. You know, some plays you can watch maybe once, twice, 3, 4, 5 times, but there are some plays you really need to watch like 10 times. I just didn't have the time to do it. So my focus has been spread out through those 3 games, and it really hurts being in Italy and not really able to connect with people on social media and seeing the Jets and the excitement. And guess what? I can't partake in the actual film breaking down, which is the best part about it for me. But nonetheless, like you said, which I want to ask about as well. You said you've been to 10 games. You said this was by far the best environment you've been to, and I'm hoping it's gonna be the same thing for the Pats game. Hoping it's gonna be the same thing for this Packers game. Would you say there was another game that was like kind of close to this? Like what kind of game do you compare it to? What other games have you been to that were really that exciting?
Well, I would definitely say the top game I've been to is the 2011 Cowboys game. But for me, I was younger at that point. I was only 10 years old. I was just kind of getting into the Jets, so I didn't really register it as much as some of these more recent games I've been to. So I guess that one would probably be better. But for me, just based on my investment level, this was better. Titans game I was at last year. But I went to this year's Ravens game, last year's Pats game, 2019 Browns game. So not the best selection that I'm comparing it against, but it easily clears those. And I think this was their first sellout in a long time. I think it was a legitimate sellout based on the attendance numbers. And it did look like that in the stadium. It was very close to full. Granted, there were a decent amount of Dolphin fans, but the Jets fans definitely showed out as well. So
I hate the Dolphins.
Goodbye to them at the end.
I hate the Dolphins fans. I hate the Dolphins. I hate everything about that team. So to see them all upset, I was just upset that I could not be there for that, because obviously they usually come and at least in recent years they've been beating us. But it is nice to go to games where it's actually like exciting, where like the last couple of years it's been, you go to games, there's 60 out of whatever it is, like 85, 90,000. Everybody's on their phones. Nobody cares. And I know you enjoyed it too, because you are a psychopath. Nania is a very like reserved person, and people think like he's very calm and stuff when he goes to football games and stuff. Like I've seen the videos, I've heard the recordings. Nania is a psychopath, so all of it comes out during the Jets games. So I'm happy for you, and I believe you went with Ben as well. So that's awesome. Now if I can go to Green Bay and they win, it's going to be absolutely wild. But of course, I'm back, so the Jets will get blown out, and then everybody's going to blame me. But hopefully not. I don't think they will, to be completely honest. We'll talk about the Packers game a little bit later, but I think they have a legitimate shot in this game. But we'll recap that later. I wonder if Joe has been watching Fish fans melting down over the Jets beating them and making excuses about it. I haven't seen a ton of people, but obviously you're going to have the injury stuff. But listen, at the end of the day, like the Jets have been one of the most injured teams in 2020, 2021, and nobody mentions, oh, the Jets really suck, but look how injured they are. Like you either win or you lose, and nobody mentions, okay, well, Becton's out. Oh, Fanta's out. Oh, Mitchell's out. Oh, we had Joe Flacco for the first 3 weeks, and like fuck the Fins fans. Like, listen, at the end of the day, spot him 2 touchdowns for Teddy Bridgewater, and spot him another touchdown for the Breece Hall play. Oh, we still beat them. Who cares? Like we blew them out. So they're bitching a lot. That's what they do. Fair weather fans, they thought they're going to come down to Jersey and have a good time, and they're all upset about it. So, and again, at the end of the day, and I think it was kind of stupid with like what happened in terms of, at least I believe it was something like they saw him stumble. So like that new rules, now he's to be out the rest of the game. But at the end of the day, it's like a trickle down effect of how they treated Tua Tagovailoa. So fuck them. So what are your thoughts about the Fins fans and crying a little bit this week, or a lot of it, not a little bit, or a little bit?
Yeah, no, I mean, like you mentioned, I think the way the final score turned out definitely kind of erases some of those concerns of, oh, you're down to your third quarterback, this guy's injured, that guy's injured, whatever. Because at the end of the day, it was a 23-point win. So the way that they finished it off definitely kind of gave you that cushion to where you feel like, okay, even if Teddy played the whole game, maybe even if Tua played, that this would still be a Jets win. So I think prior to that finish, maybe it was in slightly concerning territory where it's like, okay, maybe you should beat this team by a little bit more. But I think they kind of made up for all that very quickly with those successive touchdowns in the fourth quarter. But yeah, like you said, the Jets are, what are they down to their 6th option at tackle at this point? They had their backup quarterback the first 3 games. So, it happens. And I think the Dolphins are a team that, even without Tua, without Teddy, still have more than enough talent and investment in their roster to be able to compete in these games. And, supposedly they have a head coach who's supposed to, be able to scheme around whatever they have. And actually Tyreek Hill, a couple of weeks after the Bengals game, he claimed that he could put up numbers with anyone at quarterback, even with the guy who asked him that question. That's what he said, but apparently that's not the case. So
he only put up like 40 yards, right? And then he had his little walk of shame in his walking boot after the game, only putting up 40 yards in the Jets. But that's what's kind of worried about, like with Teddy Bridgewater, is like, okay, he gets the ball out quick. He's a smart quarterback. He doesn't have to throw the ball deep. And obviously we've had some trouble, tackling on screens and stuff like that. And obviously they clean it up a little bit, or a lot of it this week. But it's so nice to see them bitching all the time, or bitching at least a lot, or this week. And the Jets are now 2nd place in the AFC East, which is ridiculous. I think if they win this week, or no, I forget what it is. If the Jets win this week and the Bills lose, like we're tied for first or something, or there might be a couple of other domino effects with that, but I forget exactly what it is. But nonetheless, 3-2 in October. I am used to, like, literally last year, we're all excited, and the first game is obviously bad. I went to Carolina, And second game, blown out versus the Pats. Third game, blown out versus the Broncos. The season's already, it feels like it's already over. The last year of Darnold, like they get blown out versus the Niners at home, where I think the game opened up with like a 90-yard or 80-yard Mostert touchdown or something to that effect. It was very close to that. The next game, they got blown out versus the Colts. Like the fact that they're actually competing now, and we're talking about, well, if the Jets win the next 2 out of 3 at the bye week, then we can get to the playoffs. There's a legitimate shot. Like it's very, very exciting to be a Jets fan. And I'm hoping that it's a combination of people both being excited that I'm back and the fact that the Jets are actually in contention, that the chat it lit up a little bit before we even got in here, which we're not necessarily used to seeing. And again, shout out to Nania and shout out to Kyle Smith for holding it down while I was gone, even though I knew Kyle was going to take some shots. And then I asked somebody in the chat, they're like, yeah, Kyle's taking some shots, but it's fair game because in some of my film reviews, I take shots at Kyle and he's not able to respond. So it is what it is. But I did watch the last stream, and Kyle always bitches about how I handle the chat, and Kyle just skips massive sections of the chat. So he realizes it's not that easy to handle all of the chat. John Hassel, good to see you back, Joe. Hope your trip was phenomenal. Obviously, I'm looking forward to hearing about the food. Food was great. I don't really know how much you want me to get into it. The only thing I don't love about it is I would like a little bit more sauce. The thing I'm not big about Italy on is lack of sauce, lack of air conditioning, lack of fans. Because when it's hot there, you're kind of screwed in some of the apartments. But I could tell you, the drivers in Italy put USA drivers to shame. Like they actually know how to drive in Europe. They can be going 110 miles per hour. If they're not passing, they're in the right lane. It's a beautiful thing. It's great. And now I start driving around here again, and I'm just pissed off all the time because Jersey drivers, Pennsylvania drivers, New York drivers all suck. So I did love that. And obviously, John, if you're in the chat a little bit later, I'll get into some of the stuff in the places I went in Italy and all that stuff after maybe Nania jumps off. I'll talk to you guys for a little bit because I owe you 3 weeks of content and stuff. Harold, welcome back, Joe. And boy, Brees is killing it. Lawson Q wrecking havoc. Zach playing well overall. Sauce, Garrett Wilson, ABT. The story. Yeah, we're gonna talk about it in the next obviously couple of hours with some of these guys. But Brees has been really stepping up. Right after, I believe it was right as I was leaving, I criticized him a little bit in terms of getting a little bit too east and west. And then Salah came out literally like 2 days later and said he needs to go north and south more. And since that point, he's been doing it a lot. And obviously having a game last week where he almost had 200 all-purpose yards, which I believe would be the only stats guy. Which by the way, I'm not going to call you stats guy anymore because I'm going to ask you about a great article you wrote earlier this week. But nonetheless, I think that'd be the second time in Jets history that's ever happened, right? So obviously a amazing game for Brees, which we'll dive into in a little bit. You have Lawson, who after the first 2-3 weeks, I can't speak for you, Nania, but you were basically my lifeline to the Jets. I really talked to you a lot about what was going on. So you were kind of my connection to the Jets world. In the first couple of weeks, we weren't so happy with Lawson. And I think even the third week against the Bengals, like the numbers were good, but we were kind of like not necessarily living up to the contract. But the last 2 weeks, he's been lighting on fire. This game, he put up some like historical numbers for the Jets, which I'm sure you'll go over. And Q has been playing like the best player on the Jets. Maybe you can argue ABT, but I feel comfortable now that I've been backing Q for a while and I had him at number 1 in the top 25, and now he's actually playing like that. So obviously really positive news in terms of the younger guys playing well. And a guy in Lawson who is not necessarily younger, but he's 27 years old. Why can't you keep him until 28, 29 if he's still producing the way he is? So it's not like the Jets of the past where it's like some 31-year-old guys playing well. It's like, okay, well, he's gonna be gone next year. So thank you, Harold. And Nani, anything to comment on? I'm sure you have something to comment when you're talking about all of Brees, Lawson, Q, Sauce, Garrett Wilson, ABT. So if you have something to say, go ahead.
Oh, yeah. I mean, with Lawson, it was great to see him. And like you said, I'm sure we'll get into it more, but to quickly touch on him, I mean, first few games wasn't where you wanted the production and just the impact to be. But I think from watching him, I could clearly see, like, he's got it physically still. It's still there. He was just kind of getting back into his rhythm, and it really felt like the breakout game was close. I think against the Steelers, he got a lot better, and then you really put it all together against the Dolphins. So this game is definitely one of those peak Carl Lawson performances that, back in his 2020 season, I think he gave you a good, I think it was pretty common to see him play at this level in 2020. So definitely good to see him get back to that peak form.
Yeah, so what I want to do, I'm going to do this really, really quick because, again, people don't really care about the Bengals and the Steelers game. But for the people who are like, oh, well, what did you think about it? You obviously watched it. I'm going to go through my thoughts like really, really quickly, just like position groups, like as quickly as I possibly can. If you have anything you want to add, Nania, or even ask, like, obviously I watch the games and we like to kind of get each other's opinions, even though we talked plenty over Slack the last 3 weeks. I was in Italy for 18 days. I thought we talked plenty, but nonetheless, Flacco was absolutely terrible in the Bengals game, right? I don't think he deserves to be on any top 25 list. I think that's safe to say. The left side of the offensive line was brutal. Fant was bad. He's obviously been playing with an injury. Tomlinson was also very, very bad. I would say center through right tackle were decent. ABT was obviously good in there as well, but overall the offensive line struggled. Wilson, Elijah Moore, regardless of the stats, looked good. Conklin, that was like an 8-catch, 80-ish yard game for him, so he looked solid in that game, even though he might have had a big mistake. I forget exactly. The defensive line, Q was good. Lawson was okay. JFM was absent. The rotation, that was the game where we were talking about the rotation, where it was like ridiculous, where you pay a guy in JFM, what is it, like $14 million a year, and he played like 48% of the snaps or 49% of the snaps that game, which is ridiculous. The linebackers were very meh. The safeties were absolutely brutal in that game. LaMarcus Joyner, Whitehead were absolutely terrible. You have another game where the corners were very good. You have Sauce Gardner talking shit to Jamar Chase, shutting him down. I believe you edited that graphic. I don't know if you put Jamar Chase or a couple of Bengals receivers. I think he only got one catch on him, was T. Higgins, if I'm not mistaken, or am I wrong?
Yeah, he got that big catch that was contested when Joyner hit him after. Other than that, it was pretty quiet for Sauce. Yeah,
nothing really to add, right? Like that's really quick. It's like who wants to talk about a game 2 games ago, especially a game we lost. The Steelers game, I obviously wrote a couple of notes here, so maybe reading some stuff. So it's like, oh, he's reading it, because I can't remember 3 weeks of stuff. But Zach was good. The movement in the pocket was pretty good. I thought he calmed down later in the game where he was bailing out a little bit, but he got more comfortable in the pocket. In the Steelers game, he had the bad force to Wilson, which was behind him, I believe. That was almost picked. I think it was like a sail concept, and he forced it there. Not a good play there from him. He had a couple of missed passes. His feet still need to improve. He has trouble in terms of, again, that inner rotation off the back leg, and he has a problem where he's not necessarily driving his front foot towards the target, and he kind of, let's just say he's throwing it, more vertically, he'll turn it too far to the right, and that doesn't allow your hips to fully rotate through, and then it becomes just an arm throw. An arm throw, you have a chance to rip it, throw it over their heads or even throw it under. So he needs to fix that a little bit. He obviously looked a lot more comfortable this game, but we'll get into that in a little bit. The interception that I saw, and I saw a lot of people talking about it with Elijah Moore right before the half, that's on Moore to me. I severely doubt that Mike LaFleur is drawing up a comeback or a curl with an over, or I think it was an over or deep over coming to that side. That makes absolutely no sense just schematically. So it looks like Elijah Moore was supposed to run that guy off, and he gave up, and not necessarily just gave up like, oh, I'm just going to stop my play necessarily. It was more like, okay, this guy's over top of me. I'm not going to make a play on this ball unless I break back. So he's looking for the ball when his assignment was to obviously run that guy off. Wilson overthrows the ball regardless, so it wouldn't have been completed, at least in my opinion, and it ends up in a pick. But not the worst pick I've ever seen, but it wasn't necessarily good. Did you come to that conclusion, Nania? Because I'm not sure if that's what you came to, but to me it looked like, again, it was supposed to be a runoff, and he ran I forget if it was a comeback or a curl, which is his fault. But with that being said, Wilson still did overthrow it, so it probably would have been an incomplete pass instead of an interception, but still obviously not ideal.
Yeah, no, I think there was definitely a lot of blame for Moore on that one. Like you said, still probably not a great play either way, but for that being an interception, probably on Moore. And quickly, I think, the Tyler Conklin interception in that one, kind of the same thing, to where it's like, not an ideal play for sure, but not necessarily interception worthy. But at the same time, there were some he got away with in that game, so maybe it balanced out a little bit.
Yeah, to me with the Conklin one, it was still high. And I heard Kyle say it, I think it was last show, where like, I'm not of the belief where it hits you in the fingers, like you can catch that ball. It's just bullshit to me, especially when people don't consider how freaking fast those balls are coming at you. It's not like you're playing, you're not lofting a ball 25 miles per hour in the parking lot. Those balls are coming like 55 miles per hour. My thing with that interception, though, it was from Zach, was if the mental processing was better and he was more decisive, I don't think it would have been a pick, because he drops back, he sees him open, he like goes to throw it, kind of hesitates, and then has to slide in the pocket and throw it sidearm. So if he was just more confident in himself, it probably would have been more on target. But because he had to change his arm angle because he hesitated, that's what made the ball go high. Obviously, you still want Conklin to catch it, but kind of just it was on Zach a little bit, but obviously more in Conklin for dropping him. Not necessarily the easiest play to make for Conklin. But then you get to the fourth quarter, poise, the great arm strength that we saw. I know Sabo broke down that corner. But no, it wasn't a corner route. It was a comeback to the right sideline, right, with Elijah Moore, just in terms of anticipation, the silky release he has, how quick it is. So that was obviously a really good play. That wasn't in the fourth quarter, but nonetheless, he was getting through his reads a little bit quicker in the fourth quarter. Obviously, he went like 10 for 12, I believe it was, for like 80, 90 yards. So that was really good. Obviously, listen, at the end of the day, like that's a hard stadium to play in, like regardless of the situation. And you've been watching for a couple of years now, and obviously you're a little bit of you saying 10 games, you've only been to 10 games, and in 2011, I was only 10 years old, makes me hate you a little bit because I'm a little bit older than you. And I'm sure the people who are a little bit older than me hate down, only 29 years old. But like I've experienced plenty of bad, you a little bit less, but the fans who are like the John Hassels out there and stuff like that have experienced a lot more than I have. But like it felt identical to like the Baker Mayfield game, Isaiah Crowell wiping his ass. He comes in, the stadium's pumped up. The Steelers are playing Renegade, all this stuff. Kenny Pickett's getting touchdowns, running the ball and all this shit. And here it goes. It's 10-20 or 20-10. Sorry. And I admitted to you, I was a little bit wine drunk that day. And I got mad and I just fast forward to the end. I was like, I just want to see the freaking score. Like I'm done with this stupid team, 20-10 bullshit. And I saw that they were winning. I was like, whoa, fast, go back real quick. And I watched the rest of the game. So for Zach Wilson to be in that environment and come back with the Steelers, with them playing Renegade, with the excitement of Kenny Pickett coming in, was really, really exciting. Obviously a game that I think Salah referred to today or maybe yesterday, where he said like that was an instance where he carried the team a little bit more than the team carried him. That was near elite play in the fourth quarter from Zach Wilson. I think the only other bad play that I could think of from Zach Wilson in that game, or just in general, was he was still getting stuck on his first read a little bit. And then he had, again, that really bad throw to Garrett Wilson that could have been a pick. And then he had that ball that was almost picked by Minka, where he just needs to get rid of that ball, like throw it a couple more yards out. Like, I don't know why it was so tight to the sideline where Minka almost caught it. And then you had all these, again, Steelers fans bitching, oh, they didn't call us an interception. Both of his feet were in. He didn't control it through the ground, idiots. Like, what are you doing? So nonetheless, anything else to add from Zach Wilson from that game? I'm trying to run through it really quickly. I'm excited. Coffee. So I already know I'm talking a lot. I'm going to get the crack comments soon. But nonetheless, I want to run through it quickly just to stay on the relevant stuff. But I do want to give people my thoughts on those games.
No, yeah, this is your return. I mean, I think you got all the right to kind of recap a little bit. I mean, people deserve your thoughts. It's a big loss when you're not here. I think there's a huge vacancy. But yeah, I think the way that they were able to make that comeback, it's just not something that you're used to seeing from the Jets. And like you mentioned, it's a tough environment, regardless of that not being the greatest Steeler team. Zach is the third youngest quarterback to beat Mike Tomlin in Pittsburgh, behind Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes. So it's not something you see commonly. And you mentioned Baker Mayfield in that game. It was complete deja vu of that. So I think it's just symbolic to kind of go through that same kind of experience, but flip it on its head and get the opposite outcome. I think it can kind of be a signal of how things are different to, that specific quarterback and team, and just other teams that have failed to do similar things.
Yeah, completely agree. Brees was good that game too. AVT played left tackle, which, like, we could talk about Q maybe being better than him, like just individually, but in terms of his flexibility and AVT and what he means to the team right now, you could talk about him potentially being the MVP. Probably like legitimately is, especially when you talk about it, like the relevance in terms of how he relates to Zach Wilson, the importance of making your quarterback comfortable. But overall, that game, the run blocking was gross. Every time they ran the ball, it was like, it was like the Adam Gase, Frank Gore years, where it was like, 2nd and 9, 2nd and 11, 2nd and 10, 3rd and 10. It's like, and Zach Wilson pulled us out like so many situations where it's like 3rd and 10, 4th and 6, 4th and 8, whatever it was. So he played his balls off. Tomlinson, I could tell I was, again, had a couple of glasses of wine when I wrote this one, but I said Tomlinson likes to talk but sucks. And then I said regret saying he was as good as he was. And if you did watch that film review, and Kyle mentioned it when we recapped the film review, I said, like, I thought he was more like in that 8 to 12 range. That might have been a little bit generous because I'm trying to be a little bit positive. I wasn't the biggest fan of his film, but I get it, the signing in terms of the comfortability with the system and the fact that he is a guy who has been consistently on the field. So that was a big reason for it. Now, in terms of the fans who thought, okay, we're getting a top 5, top 6, 7, 8 left guard in the league, I was kind of trying to backpedal people on that one a little bit. And we've seen a little bit of that we've seen a lot of bit of that since he's been playing. This week was better, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. Other than that, for the offense, I thought Conklin was decent, but he had that one big drop. I forget exactly when that was, but I wrote that down. This was a game where Corey Davis dominated, which I think you were on the train with me, Nania. We were defenders of Corey Davis, and recently there's been fans who have been rounding out. Like, people were talking about cutting the guy. He's making $11-12 million, and I consistently said, and people made fun of me on the stream, I was always saying, oh, he's going to bring up Nelson Aguilar again. Nelson Aguilar is making the same amount of money, or right near the same amount of money that Corey Davis is. Who would you rather have? Zay Jones is making
Kenny
$10 million.
Throw him into that conversation.
Kenny Galladay is making $18 million, whatever it is. Like Corey Davis for $12 million should be a lock to be on this team next year as well. So people talk about getting rid of him so quickly. He is, if not the best number 3 in the league, one of the, or at least top 3, top 5. Again, obviously you could consider him a number 2 or even 1 in some games. Like that Steelers game, he was the number 1 for Zach Wilson. But nonetheless, like Corey Davis is a lock at this contract next year, obviously, unless somebody falls into the Jets' laps, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's been a huge bounce back from him. This year, I think he's been exactly what they hoped they were getting when they signed him last year. I mean, he's gotten the drops down, the fumbles are gone. There's no more of there were a lot of intercepted targets last year where he pops the ball up and it gets picked off or slips on a route or whatever. Those are gone. And it feels like every time he gets targeted, it's a big conversion and a huge spot. So really, run blocking has been excellent. So great bounce back year from him so far.
Which, by the way, it's a quick side note, hell of a job by the offense after that catch that Zach Wilson threw the ball behind for a purpose, because I think the safety was dropping down and hurrying up to the line and snapping the ball right there because it did not look like a catch. But nonetheless, that's what we're saying. Like, and we were saying it, like, who would have thought that, Nania, that he had 4-year sample size? 4-year sample size, and we said he's going to round out. There's no way he's going to be this bad. Almost like Conklin. Like, Conklin did not drop the ball with the Vikings, did not fumble the ball. I believe he's had 2 fumbles in his entire career. And the Jets, week 1 and 2, he had a fumble and a fumble. So Conklin's going to round out too. There's people out there saying that he's terrible, get rid of him. You're crazy. Same thing with Davis, terrible, get rid of him. And now people love him, because the highs and lows of fandom, it just is what it is. But you got to try to be level-headed. And Corey Davis is a good player. The defensive line from that game, Q dominated again. JJ had a relatively nice sack. Pickett, I think it was Pickett, did obviously run back into it a little bit. Lawson started to create a little bit more pressure. And this is another one I wanted to bring up. Rankins played, and I didn't see necessarily the statistics or any of the rankings or anything like that, which I guess we can get into that now a little bit. But and I'm asking about the Steelers game, but Rankins in general, he played well this game as well. What are the numbers saying about Rankins? Because he was a guy who we were relatively excited about him. I'm talking about the Steelers game. He played well in this game against the Finns as well. But he was a guy who we thought, okay, I think he had a bad injury in like 18 and 19 and then came back like halfway through 2020 or something to that effect. And we thought he might start out a little bit slow and have to, kind of rebound from the injury. But we expected a lot more than what we got of Rankins last year. And he was a guy who we were talking about like getting rid of. And this year, just based on me watching it really, really quickly, he's been flashing a lot. And I pointed out, and you pointed out as well, which is a good job by you. Like, he's doing a much better job this year in terms of noticing traps and whams and fighting against those blocks or scraping over the top to cross that guy's face, because he knows that's where the block is. Obviously, if he's getting down blocked to the inside, okay, the run's probably going opposite of that. So he's been doing great with that. But what are the numbers saying about him? Because he's been impressive. I think he's only making like $5.5 million.
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, I've been noticing that on the film each week, starting with really, I think the Browns game's first time was like, this kind of looks like the old Rankins, because, he was an exciting addition. They didn't necessarily have a huge need at that position last year when they got him, but it was like, okay, here's another weapon for this defensive front, another good athlete who fits this scheme. Was very productive with the Saints, but did not have a good year last year. Was dominated in the run game, and his pass rushing wasn't as good as usual. But this year he's been back to, just like Corey Davis is going back to his career norms, Rankins is doing the same thing. And I was also on the train to cut him because I think there's some cap relief you could get for him. He's on the older side, but this year he's been what they hoped they were getting, just like with Corey Davis. I think the run defense has been a lot more sound and disciplined, and he's been making more splash plays too. And in terms of the numbers, he's already got 10 run stops this year. He had 12 all last year. So the activity is up in the run game, and I think what he's doing is a big part of why this run defense is not nearly as bad as I think and granted the Dolphins game, their struggles, but overall through 5 games, the run defense, not as bad as we expected. And Rankins is a big part of that.
Yeah, I think Quan is a big part of that too. And even though like Whitehead, I think Whitehead's a part of it. While he misses some tackles, he also makes those splash plays. And I'm not necessarily sure like how the numbers play out with that, but he's been a part of it. But in the Steelers game, Mosley and Quan were very to me. Joyner had 2 picks. Whitehead had a pick as well. Joyner had that really, really nice pass deflection early in the game where I think it's like a deep corner to, was it Claypool or Pickett? It might have been Pickett that he had a really nice PD. The tipped pass to Claypool that got intercepted by Whitehead, I actually think he misplayed the ball a little bit there in terms of tracking it, but once the ball was closing in, he actually made a good play on it after the fact. So Joyner with a massive bounce back game. And I remember like before or after the Browns game, people were talking about just him in general. Like, oh, well, would you replace him with Ashton Davis? I don't know. I don't remember like my exact answer, but my thing is like Joyner's at least showed some decent level of play at the NFL level where Ashton Davis really hasn't shown anything. So I'm happy that he's actually rounding back into form where I don't think he's necessarily a good safety, but for a stopgap guy for a year, I think he could be, a bad starter, which is a lot. And people are going to take that out of context. Oh, he's a bit bad. I think a bad starter is a lot different than a bad backup. He was playing like a terrible backup who shouldn't be rosterable. So the fact that he's like below average to bad starter these last couple of weeks, and the numbers maybe say differently, I'm much happier with Joyner, and I think he obviously deserves to start. And we anticipated this with this team a little bit. And it's hard to quantify when you're in the fandom, when you're in the games, when it's a week-by-week thing. You get one game to evaluate it. You have a whole week of people talking shit about the Jets. And we'll overreact. But like the thing we were saying before coming into the season was like they're a young team, a lot of new position guys. They're going to take their lumps early. They took their lumps early, and we lost our shit. So it's always hard to like weigh it out with your fandom. But nonetheless, the cornerbacks from that game, obviously Sauce was very good. He almost got beat deep. I forget. I think it was Deontay Johnson who didn't get his feet in bounds, so he almost got beat deep. But nonetheless, he was still pretty solid in that game. Talking a little bit more shit to Pickett. You got to love Sauce, which I'm repping the Sauce jersey right now. And then you had Reed, who was also solid. I don't think he was great that game. I thought he was solid, but not amazing. Past that, LaFleur, some of the like the concepts and stuff people were talking about. You saw some of the stuff of like guys not running past the sticks. We saw some concepts that there was guys lumping into the same zone. You're getting covered by one guy that I didn't necessarily love from LaFleur in that game. But overall, he was decent. Safeties were good, corners were good. Anything else to add or discuss with the Steelers game before we get back into the chat and hit the Fins game?
No, I pretty much agree with everything you said. I think we got to get into this Miami game. I'm ready to talk about this.
Okay. Yeah.
What a game! What a game! That's all I got to say. Let's get it.
I am already an hour behind in the chat because people were chatting at 6 or like 7 o'clock. Or actually, I think the first one was from like Eagle at 5 and John Hassel from like 6:23. But I'm gonna get into the chat and then we'll get into like the bullet points of the game. There's a lot to talk about. Obviously, like I said, the Fins fans bitching that they lost because of the backup quarterback. I don't think that Teddy Bridgewater covers 2 touchdowns, 3 touchdown spread. I don't think it goes from the Jets winning by 23 to them losing that game because of Teddy Bridgewater in the game. So again, give him 2 touchdowns, give him a touchdown for the Breece Hall blown coverage that led to a touchdown. Like we blew him out at the end. Obviously, at the beginning, I wasn't thrilled. To be honest, you have the first drive that stalls out. It is what it is. You have the ball on 3rd down that's batted down by, I forget if it was Wilkins or not, but it stalls out there. Okay, they had pretty good field position, and then you had the big punt return by Barrios, right? That was like to the 50-yard line. They didn't really capitalize off of it. I think even the drive after that, they didn't capitalize on it. So like you had a game where it was 5-0, but that was after 2 or 3 Jets drives from the offense where I thought they had good field position. They didn't necessarily capitalize on it. Now, obviously, there's an offensive onslaught after that fact. But this game didn't even start well. And then you have another backup quarterback coming in and saying, okay, we beat, Kenny Pickett is now Skylar Thompson. Is that his name? He comes in and he didn't look like brutal to me. Like people, talk about Bridgewater and how much of a difference him or Tua would have made, but it's not, I don't think Skylar was like dreadful in this game. But nonetheless, like, what were your feelings going through the beginning of that game? Obviously, Sauce getting that intentional grounding for a safety. Now, I agree with the call because if that tight end was engaged, I don't know what tight end it was. If that tight end's engaged, he's not necessarily an eligible receiver. That's how the rule book reads. So I think it was a correct call on the safety. Now, should Bridgewater have been out for the game? I didn't see any stumbles. I didn't see any trips, but obviously the refs are going to have a little bit of PTSD with the whole Tua thing. So I think they got a little bit, I think they screwed that one up a little bit, but nonetheless, what'd you think about the beginning of the game?
No, I definitely think I was a little uneasy, and I'll be completely honest. And Ben, who I watched the game with, who co-hosts Cool Your Jets with me, he can attest to this. I'm a reactionary fan. When things are going well, I'm like jumping up and down, screaming like no one else screams watching these games. But when things aren't going great, even if they're going okay, like I get very overly critical. So, like you said, I think you're 3 drives in and it's still 5-0. And, everyone around me is like, all right, let's go. Like, defense is playing well. We got a lead. And I'm like, we should be up a little bit more right now. Like, let's not let them hang around here. Mm-hmm. So it was a little uneasy, but I think you could still kind of feel like the Jets had control because the drives weren't, they weren't 3 and outs. They weren't atrocious drives. Like, they were getting a little bit of movement. Then they would have, there's a sack on the second drive, the first drive. There's pass deflection. Then the third one, they got a field goal. They, couldn't get that pass. There was pressure. He couldn't get the pass to Moore in the back of the end zone. They weren't the worst drive. So you could see like, all right, they're moving the ball. And then defensively, they weren't giving up to that point too much of anything. So I think you still felt pretty good about it, but they were letting them hang around. But then, the Breece Hall pass comes. And from there, it really felt like the Jets had total control, even with a couple of defensive touchdown drives that they allowed. Once they got that 12-0 lead, they kind of were able to hold on to control for most of the game. Those first few drives definitely kind of left the door open a little bit.
Yeah, they do have to improve. End of the first half, they've been letting up some scores, and then even in the third quarter, obviously, the Dolphins went on like 2 touchdowns that were unanswered or something to that effect. It was right around there. But in terms of like being that like irrational fan, we're at the games. And Cool Jets podcast. You obviously got to listen to it. It's a JetX podcast. But you guys had a podcast featuring Batman, and I'm the same way. After it, I like my voice is gone for a good 2-3 days. And Ryan from Jets Talk could attest to this. I think it was after the first game, he asked me to go on, or I was supposed to go on, and I called him, and I literally sounded like Ben. I'm like, I can't do a show for 2 hours. There's absolutely no way. And I think it was Art who came up to the tailgate after, and like I was kind of talking like that as well. So I appreciate your guys' fandom, but then obviously you come in to evaluate it and stuff like that. But the start was a little bit concerning. And again, you have a bunch of things that you feel like go your way. I don't know why I said way like I was Canadian, but nonetheless, you have a couple things go your way. You have the safety, you have the quarterback get knocked out early in that game. You have multiple face masks, or was it a face mask and like a late hit, whatever it was. So like, okay, the Jets are driving, they're getting penalties going their way, and they're up 5-0. It's like shit. Like, did we kind of get a big boost to not really get that far ahead? So I was nervous as well. But we'll get into the rest of the game. I'm gonna get to the chat a little bit more because I am far away from getting up to the current time. NY Jet Superfan, appreciate that. Bustin' Knuckles, what's up, man? Eagle Fang, my Joe, my favorite play of the game is Quinn Williams, Stephon on Tyreek to hell on the fumble recovery. Yeah, that was obviously great. Did you notice how big of a step arm that was live in the stadium, Nania, or did it take you to like watch a replay? Like, holy shit! And I don't think he necessarily went after Tyreek Hill. Like, he was just running that way. He saw he was running at him, so he took the fight to Tyreek Hill. But obviously, really fun to see a guy, and I put it up like, Tyreek paying his taxes or whatever on Twitter. But obviously to see Tyreek Hill, who comes out, I don't know what day it was, but it comes out and says like he didn't go to the Jets because of the state income tax or whatever tax it is. To see him get this shit stiff armed out of him by Quentin Williams after a fumble recovery, stripped by Carl Lawson, was just like the cherry on top to this game. To see him shut down.
No, I didn't know immediately that it was Tyreek. I was just like, Quentin picked up the ball and he was bowling over people. I was like, let's go. I wish he scored it, but either way, I didn't know until after that it was Tyreek. But I mean, what a perfect signature moment to remember this win by. I mean, not only do you blow them out, but you get your defensive tackle just trucking the number one guy on the other team that your team hates. So, and you know that the Jets players absolutely took some of his comments to heart. Mosley's acknowledging it after the game. I think he had an Instagram post about it or something. So, Jets
did he? What was the post? I didn't see the post from Mosley.
I forgot what it was. I'd have to look at it. I know he acknowledged it.
And Sauce after the pick, he's doing the peace sign. I think
peace sign. So and then Michael Carter does the Waddle celebration,
which I guess they're friends. So but it is nice to see the Jets like win, get some confidence. And I think it came out that Breece Hall was like on the sideline at a certain point in this game. Was like, dude, we're fucking like we could be really good. Like we have some talent on this team. And you saw after the game like Waddle like grabbing Carter from behind, like laughing and shit. So they might be friends, but like still, you have the peace sign, you have the Waddle thing, but like, and we are so invested in this team. Nania and everybody in here, 172 people are all really invested, but like. How many chats are we sitting in Slack and just like, oh my God, if we can get this guy, if we lose this game and get the pick and Trevor Lawrence, we're talking for hours and hours about absolutely nothing that actually materializes. And like that Tyreek thing, we were going crazy like all offseason. We want Tyreek, we wanted Debo, we wanted AJ Brown. How big is it for the Jets? And then we wake up one day. I remember I was about to go for a run. And this shit hits the fan, and I'm like, my wife wanted me to do something, some house thing. I don't know what we were doing, but I wanted to go for a run to do something else around the house or something, husband duty. And I was like, absolutely not. Like I am glued to my phone until this resolves itself. And we're messaging on Slack. We're getting all excited about this stuff. Tyreek coming to the Jets, which obviously, you don't necessarily love his personality, but still, we kind of overlook that. And then he goes to. Not only does not go to the Jets, but he goes to the team I hate the most in the NFL, and the Dolphins. So from that point on, I absolutely just hated him, rooted against him. To see the Jets beating the team he went to, and to see one of my favorite Jets, if not my favorite Jet, stiff arm him, 4 yards. That was an elite play. So I would say that's my favorite play from the game as well there. But Square Peg, what's up? Welcome back, Joe. Kyle and Nania did an excellent job holding it down. I think Nania did better than Kyle, but that's my
thanks, Square Peg.
No, Kyle did a good job. Kyle did a good job. But I was watching some stuff. Awesome. Like, I want to comment. Like little things. Like I remember listening to you talk about was it Connor McDermott's stance? Like you guys were talking about that. Like, I want to talk about the stance. Yeah. Like little things like that I wasn't able to comment on. Which by the way, that stance is terrible. You gotta load up your front foot. Like he not only was his hands not on his knees, which again I agree with Kyle, it's a little bit more of a preference thing, but you have to load up your lead leg to explode off of it. You can't be like 50-50 in terms of your weight distribution and then expect to explode backwards. So it's just like little things that he has no idea about, which I don't get how you're in the NFL. You get coaching and it's your job and you don't know how to stand correctly. Like ridiculous. Justin Sanders, what's up? Alex Hunt, let's get some likes. I agree. West Coast Jets, sneakers, Verge, Tyreek paid his Jets taxi. I love that. It's time. ABT for Prez. What's up, everyone? A bunch of excited people. I'm looking forward to getting through the next hour of chat I have to get through. Let's see. The Jets are playing meaningful football in October. Pinch me. The Jets are playing meaningful football weeks 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Like it's crazy. Like when's the last time that we legitimately were excited about a Jets team? Like not necessarily like going the distance, but like making a legitimate run. People are going to say it was 2017. We started off the year 3-2, but who was our quarterback? It was Josh McCown. Like we had legitimately no hope. And then in 2015, exciting. But again, this is like the fandom versus like trying to really think about it like analytically or film wise or just like team building wise. It's like, we're getting led by Ryan Fitzpatrick. Like how great is this really going to be? So this is by far the most exciting start to a year since 2010 to me. Again, saving the 2015 stuff, your quarterback is Ryan Fitzpatrick. It's a lot different when you're winning games with Zach Wilson than Fitzpatrick. Yeah. But do you agree with that? I'm assuming you agree with that.
No, yeah. I mean, 2015 was fun. Like, I know it didn't necessarily have the future aspect of it at quarterback, but they went all in free agency, and it felt like it was a team that could. The way they started the season, maybe they could make a run in the playoffs. So, 2015 was pretty fun. So, I guess for me, it's since then. 2017, that team was supposed to be a tanking team, blown out the first 2 games. Then you have 3 wins in a row out of nowhere, and you're playing the Patriots for first place. You're up 14-3 on them. So they kind of roped us in a little bit in 2017. But in the back of your mind, you knew, okay, this team isn't going that far. But this team, it feels like there's no limit to how far they could go. That's not to say they will do it this year. There's most likely going to be more lumps coming. But when you have so many young players, highly drafted young players with a lot of talent, leading you to these wins, there's no limit to how much you could grow as the season goes on and as the years go on. I mean, it's just like, as good as this team is playing right now, you just think about the guys who are leading them to these wins. I mean, Breece Hall, 79-yard catch, Sauce Gardner interception, Quinnen Williams fumble recovery, and Garrett Wilson making a big third down conversion late in the game, a game-winning touchdown by both Breece Hall and Garrett Wilson. Like, these are rookies carrying the team right now. And it's like, I remember 2020 being like, oh, P. Ryan ran for a touchdown. Oh, Mims had
nobody celebrating, but back then on that P. Ryan touchdown.
It's like you just cherry pick, like, got to dig so deep to find the young players doing something to be happy about. But now
that's what you got made fun of for, Nania.
Players it's making game-winning plays.
In the third quarter, when the Jets were down 10, the Jets are the second percentile in jump balls at the 45-yard line. It's like you're digging for positives. Like, and you wrote the article was 100 reasons to be positive about Sam Darnold or whatever. Like, we were digging, and now there's legitimate reasons. Like, even like the vet signing, like DJ Reed. Like, we're talking about one of the better cornerback duos in the league. Like, the guy's 25 years old. Like, we're seeing legitimate building blocks play well. And, they're going to have some lumps. They're going to have another rough game or two. But, like, we said 7 to 9 wins, at least I did, and be competitive and show growth. And, like, listen, like, these guys are producing, but, like, what is Garrett Wilson, Breece Hall, these guys going to be in year 2, in year 3, and year 4? What is ABT going to be when he can play the same position for a year in a row? I'm excited. And, like, you have in the future, which we don't want to get too much into, like, we want to talk about the Fins. I want to hit the chat, but, like, you're going to have players, and I know the Jets don't have a lot of cap space, but, like, there's going to be some players who are going to want to come to the Jets, next year. There's going to, and looking at the team, like, it's not a team that was backloaded. Like, you look at the Jets in 2010, like, if you just looked at their contracts, like, you knew this shit was going to hit the fan. The Jets team is built very well in terms of their contract structure, all that stuff. And we have a guy at the helm who, again, I probably say this more than any other term, the process versus results. And I agree with a lot of Joe Douglas's process. And, like, we're going to the draft next year, and I have faith in what he's going to do with those draft picks. Like, it's exciting. Like, I am so excited to be back, to be talking football, to not be like, oh, I'm talking to my wife, like, oh, the Jets did this. And then she's like, I don't care. It's like, fuck, like, I just need to talk. So I'm legitimately excited. The Jets are 3-2. Let's go to Lambeau and kick the shit out of the Packers. Rodgers saying that they can't lose to the Jets, or they can't even bring it up. But we're going to go there, shut down their running game, and dominate their receivers. I can't wait. If they win in Lambeau, it's going to be a shit. I'm calling out. I'm getting drunk. The extreme.
It's totally on. If they win this week, Jets fans are going to be insufferable.
It's good. Yeah, it's going to be bad. And then, like, you look at that game, and this is why we always can't evaluate, like, the schedule too early. But, like, let's say and I don't want to be negative. Like, okay, they lose this game. Okay, I understand it. Lambeau, all this stuff. But, like, why can't we beat the Broncos? The Broncos, look at what Russell Wilson is doing right now. So if they have a legitimate shot, they beat the Broncos, beat the Pats, you go into the bye week at 5-4, like 9 wins, 10 wins, 6 seed, 7 seed, 5th seed. Like, dude, I'm very excited. But Yoshi, the man, the myth, the legend, came back with a beard. It's not a full beard. It's a little bit of a goatee. It's a couple of weeks of growth, but it'll get better. My wife hates it because I grow it out for like 3 months and it gets like really long. And then towards the end, because we have like the no shave for 3 months in my department, and I'll make it like a Fu Manchu, and it'll be like down to here, like just like a mustache. So I'll do a stream with the Fu Manchu. But welcome back, Rob D. What's up? How's the pizza in Italy? John's gonna kill me because I ate so much shit I forget. I like the Roman style over the Florentine style. It's good. The pizza, but that's not necessarily what you're going to go for. Some of it's a little bit soupy, but nonetheless. GVH, what's up? Joe, going to go to Europe more often. Good times on the horizon. I'm going to Greece in September, I think. So I'll be gone and the Jets will win again. But there are people out there like, dude, you got to tell your wife, like, enough with the September to January vacations. Like, we can't do that. And we have had some conversations, but like, it's always September, October she wants to go. And it's always like, oh, end of April. Let's do this. I'm like, stop. We can't. End of April. What are you talking about? Beginning of April.
Just
beginning.
do it in June. Do it in June, early July.
Yeah. Like, it's not even like at beginning of April. Okay, I got the film reviews out. That's fine. But like, not only the draft, but like after the draft, then you have like 6, 7, 8 guys that you have to do film reviews on. Like, I will schedule better. Feels like the Jets are 17-0. It's up Z Sizzle. Joe, have you had a chance to look at the film from week 5? Bet you didn't think your vacay would be during the yeah, I know. But with that being said, again, obviously the Jets are built very well. So I expected some excitement. With Joe Flacco leading the team, I wasn't necessarily as excited, but Danielle, I don't know. Danielle Ellie. Okay. Let's keep going. Nice go. Zach's performance. Let's talk about Zach's performance in this game. Let's hit that, because I don't want to just hit the chat for too long and not talk about Zach Wilson. I have a bunch of like just random notes about him. 14 for 21, 210 yards, 1 rushing touchdown. I was relatively confident in him early in this game. I thought he was pretty solid, but the first throw of the game, he wrote out the RPO. I forget if it's an RPO or a play action. He wrote it out very, very well. He put the ball behind Garrett Wilson because there's a safety dropping down the middle. So like really good ball placement there, really good understanding of how not to throw that hospital ball and how to obviously have a higher completion percentage chance. The second throw to Carter was on target. So that's obviously good. It's a big problem throwing into the flat, specifically more to his right than his left, at least typically from what I've seen. But that was good to see. And then the third throw, it was a spin concept. The Jets run that all the time, the spin concept, where you have like the outside guy who runs a dig route, and then the guy who's running like a shorter route underneath either can sit it down, could break inside or break out outside. It's more of an option type concept for that underneath guy. And Davis was open for a third down on that play, and he was going to fire it to him, and the ball gets batted down. So like early on in this game, just watching his mental processing, how he was placing the ball, I was pretty confident in that Zach Wilson was going to have a good game. And again, you're going to have those people who are like the stat humpers out there, which again, Nania is not. We're going to get into his article that he wrote in a little bit. But nonetheless, people are going to say, oh, well, he didn't throw a touchdown, 210 yards, that, he didn't do anything, but like he did what he needed to do in this game. He looked confident. He looked poised. He had good pocket movement. He showed the ability to create outside the pocket. He had the throw to Elijah Moore where there was some pressure. He rolled out a little bit to the left, floated the ball up there, and it was perfect placement to the sideline for Elijah Moore. And Elijah Moore just didn't get his feet in bounds. He also had a throw in the Steelers game, by the way, too. He had that throw to Corey Davis deep down the right sideline where Corey Davis didn't get his feet in bounds, and that was another beautiful throw. So he's showing better accuracy. He's reading defenses quicker. His processing is quicker. So I was impressed by him, and we'll get into some of the more nuances. But like overall, I was impressed with Zach Wilson, even though he didn't light up the stat sheet.
No, I thought it was a good, solid game from him. I mean, it's the ideal game that you built this team to have when it comes to supporting him, because how many times have we seen over the years with these young quarterbacks the Jets have had where they really need to rely on him for so much. And in this game, they didn't necessarily need him to carry the entire team on his shoulders because the run game was good, because they got good field position. So he didn't have to, throw the ball 40 times. He only, I think, 21 passes in this game, which is very low, obviously. So I think you're not going to be able to do that every single game. But in this game, that's what it called for. And he did his job and he needed to. I mean, when the Jets really started taking control of the game in the fourth quarter, after that Miami missed field goal, it all started with that crazy throw he made outside to Corey Davis. Then from there, he hits Breece Hall in the flat, just taking the easy stuff, letting the playmakers make plays. He had a key third down throw to Garrett Wilson. So he's just running the show really nicely right now. And, maybe the numbers aren't, out of this world, but that's just a matter of circumstance more than anything. I mean, he's playing good football and just looks like the stable leader of the offense that I think we want to see this year.
Yeah, decisiveness, calm, better accuracy. I think he's doing a little bit better job of standing in the pocket, delivering the ball. He had that, again, to throw to Elijah Moore. That's like the creativity to throw to Conklin. deep down the right sideline. He's a versatile linebacker, like that playmaking ability, which you watch that play over again. Like he has, I don't know if it's a linebacker or a DN, like breathing down his neck, pump fakes him to get him to jump, and then he rolls out, points him down the field, just like the Tennessee Titans play. Obviously it wasn't caught, but like he did his job. Like even the Steelers game, like I didn't think he was terrible at first. He had some plays where, again, he forced the ball to Garrett Wilson that could have been picked. He had the almost pick to fit Minka. He had a couple of bad accuracy plays, but it wasn't as bad as we saw last year. And in this game, he took more positive strides in the right direction. Now, I don't think his accuracy was perfect. He had the ball you said the Garrett Wilson on third down was a little bit behind him. In the fourth quarter, there's like the rub concept. He put it a little bit too far inside. I wanted to see it more on him to the outside. But overall, like the wheel route was on Breece Hall. In general, his accuracy was better. Now, in terms of some of the bad from him, were there any? I really like in the Steelers game, like you had some interceptable balls from him. In this game, I don't really even remember an interceptable ball. And again, I did watch. Again, shotgun the shit out of these reviews because I had three games to watch in like 2 days. But I don't remember any plays where he put the ball in harm's way. And like that's the thing. Like, he didn't have a great stat line, but he did what he needed to do to win. Like he executed. He got the ball where it needed to go. They wrote out the run game and they won by 23 points. Like we're bitching about him not having touchdowns, all this stuff. Like at the end of the day, if he doesn't run that one in, he has a touchdown and that makes us feel so much better. Like, I don't know. I thought he had a really good game, even though it didn't necessarily light it up. But I can't remember any interceptable balls off the top of my head unless maybe
I don't remember any interceptables in this one. He definitely kept it safe.
Yeah. Now he had a couple, like he had the missed pass short the hall. I forget exactly when it was, but it was another throw where he's throwing to the right, I believe. And his front foot is a little bit too turned toward the sideline. And again, when your front foot is too turned, you're not allowing your hips to fully rotate through because you're turning against yourself. So then you're almost like short striding the thrower, like short changing your hip rotation, and it becomes an arm throw, and it leads to bad accuracy. He had the play where he threw it away in the red zone. I watched that play. I don't know if you watch that play over again, but it was a middle of the field open, cover two, and Elijah Moore is open there. And in my mind, he needs to fit that ball in there. And there are, trust me, there are idiots out there, trust me, who will like, Wilson will have his first read, his second read, and like his fourth read will be open for like a second on the other side. Like, he should have hit him. It's like, he never saw him. He was going through his reads. But on that play, he saw Elijah Moore. He had the linebacker inside, like almost on his level, like probably like 5 yards inside. I thought he could have fit it in there. I didn't necessarily love that he threw that ball away because I thought it was a relatively easy touchdown to Elijah Moore. If he just processed his middle of the field open, he could fit it over the linebacker. He had the play on 4th and 1 where a lot of people got on Michael LaFleur. I forget exactly what the concept was, but I believe it was Corey Davis on the outside running a vertical, the number 2 on the inside running a dig, and then the 3 running an out. I think it might have been Conklin, but he forces the ball to Davis there. If you actually watch that play again, I believe it was Conklin. Conklin was open for a first down. So people will, again, blame the result of, he forced it to Davis or he threw it to Davis. Like, that's on Michael LaFleur. Michael LaFleur cleared the guy out. Okay, that's his first read. If he's open, throw that ball. But right off the jump from that, at the beginning of that play, the corner is playing with relatively – with a big cushion over the top. So he needs to come off that read very quickly and then go to his 2 and his 3. He locked into 1 and threw the ball there where Conklin was open. So I'm not going to kill LaFleur for that. But other than that, there really wasn't too much negative from Zach Wilson. Again, I think he has more poise. I think he's better in the pocket. I think his accuracy is slowly improving. And I think with his accuracy, it's almost like, and I think I compared it just in the past, like to me, it's almost like like he's one of those like guys like, I don't want to like overstate this, but like Steph Curry, like he can make that ridiculous play, like that ridiculous fadeaway 3-pointer because he's not thinking, he's just letting his athleticism take over. But like he'll get to the free throw line and be like, all the pressure's on me. I'm supposed to make this free throw, and I'll brick the free throw. Like he's overthinking a little bit with the short stuff, but in this game he did improve that to me. But what do you think about like in a negative from Zach Wilson in this game, even though there wasn't a ton?
Yeah, I mean, I think there were a couple throws that maybe didn't have the best ball placement. There was one to Moore that was pretty short. I mean, maybe catchable, but it was right above the ground. The one to Carter, I think, out of the backfield was kind of short. That was a good catch. Then, like you mentioned, the 3rd down throw to Wilson, maybe a little too inside. That was a really nice catch as well. But, I mean, like from a pure decision-making and ball security standpoint, I mean, there wasn't really anything in this game to complain about. I mean, there's the Elijah Moore play in the end zone that could be argued, but the Conklin play on 4th down. But other than that, I think the consistency with the decision making and the processing was really solid in this one, and I think an improvement over the Pittsburgh game in terms of doing that for all 4 quarters. So I really liked that aspect of it.
Now, take your Jets fandom cap off, Nania. Do you think the Jets have the best quarterback in the 2021 draft right now? If you threw all of them into a pool, do you think he is the best at this point? I know Trevor Lawrence started off pretty hot, but he had a game where he had like 4 fumbles or 5 fumbles, whatever it was. And to be transparent, we would have to watch those games, the film, and really watch exactly what's going on. Yeah. But like you talk about the ratings and how people are talking about these quarterbacks, Zach is performing the best so far, at least through the games he's been playing. I think the only argument is for Trevor Lawrence, but I'm pretty happy with who we got.
No, yeah. I mean, I think, again, like you said, I took off my Jets fan cap. It's back there. But I mean, I think the argument would be between, because like just looking around, I see a lot of positive hype for Zach Wilson. And it kind of reminds me of when Josh Allen had his second year. And, numbers wise, he wasn't totally there yet. He wasn't close to what he is now, that kind of superstar, but he was winning games. He was making big plays. He, had the moxie about him. So it kind of reminds me of that. And I see a lot of positive buzz for him from non-Jets people. And I think, right now there is a legitimate argument that he's number 1 just because of the year 2 improvements, because of the winning that he's doing right now. I think Mac Jones was obviously the clear number 1 last year, but the way he's played the season, he's taken a big step back. He's turning the ball over, and now he's hurt. Patriots aren't winning. So I think there is a good argument for Zach. And then Lawrence, I mean, like you mentioned, first 3 games, people were crowning him. He's having his breakout year. Then he fumbles 4 times against the Eagles, and then he can't beat the Texans at home. There's a terrible pick in the end zone. I'm judging his game on one play, but yeah, he kind of the last couple of games seems to have fallen off a little bit. But I think it's close if we're being unbiased, because at the end of the day, people are going to judge it on the stats. And Zach has 1 passing touchdown, Lawrence has 8, so he's better. But I think right now there is I do see a lot of buzz for Zach just because of the winning, the improvements, the stability of how he's playing.
Yeah, I think it's an argument for him and Lawrence 1 and 2, but like past that, and it's funny to hear people like talk about the rookie quarterback class like coming into the offseason last year, and it's like people were hyping up Fields and hyping up Lance and hyping up Lawrence, and like and Wilson was like the afterthought. It's like, we're being serious here? Like, and people were talking shit about him, like. And they clearly, a lot of national media pundits clearly did not watch the end of Zach Wilson's season, because regardless of the stats were, his mental processing, he took a lot of leaps. And like people were all talking about this year, like, oh my God, it's coming out of nowhere and all this stuff. Look how well he played in the 4th quarter versus Steelers. Watch the Bucks game. Like, he did the same shit, and that was with Jeff Smith and Tyreek Black and whoever else. Now you give him guys like Breece Hall, and like, to me, like for Zach Wilson, like it's gonna. Like, it helps his confidence too. Like, he doesn't think he has to put the team on his back. Like you could check it down to Breece Hall, and Breece Hall could take it 20 yards. Garrett Wilson could take it, 15 yards where he's only supposed to get 5. Same thing with Elijah Moore will improve, and statistically, I can almost guarantee that. But nonetheless, like, he has a lot of talent around him, and I think he's starting to realize that. He just needs to continue his pace in terms of improving his accuracy, his mental processing, his comfortability in the pocket. And I think we will have the like right now, if you legitimately told me like, okay, Zach or Trevor Lawrence, I think I'm taking Zach. Again, that is with not a lot of information on Trevor Lawrence, but from what I've seen, I haven't been overly impressed. But nonetheless, it is nice that we have at least number 1 or 2, and I think we talked about Zach Wilson after last year, and maybe it was after the Saints game, so that might have been a bad time, but like we were saying, like I think it's like a 30-35% shot he works out. Right now, if you had to put a percentage on it, it's always hard to say, but like, what is your faith in Zach Wilson being the legitimate franchise quarterback for the Jets, where they're going to ride with him for the next 5, 6, 7, 8 years, and he's that quarterback who is top 10, top 12, who would legitimately take them to the Super Bowl? Like, what is your legitimate, genuine feeling on Zach Wilson's future?
Yeah, I think like you said, and I think it was after the Saints game, because that was a tough game for him. So, yeah. I mean, 30% I think was realistic at that point. But, I mean, you don't want to overreact to 2 games that overly react to 2 games, but I mean,
100%.
60, 65. I mean, does that sound too low?
No, I'm in that range too. I am.
Yeah.
And I think that's a lot. Like people are gonna like overlook that or be like, oh my
Yeah.
God, really only 60%, 65. But like we're talking about 60, 65% shot. He's gonna be a top 10 to 12 quarterback. Like we're not talking about average. I think this year, he's gonna have that like that Josh Allen type of year where he's gonna be up and down in his second year, have some lumps, have some high highs. But we talked about it pre the season starting, and like if Zach Wilson could be an average level quarterback this year, I think the Jets can win 8, 9, 10 games because of the talent they have. And look what happened this game. He was an average level quarterback, and the Jets blew out the Dolphins. Like, you can ride that talent. And he'll have games where he carries the team on his back. The Steelers game, that was he carried the team. Now, Corey Davis obviously like helped him out, and there were some players who helped him out, but like that was a legitimately very good quarterback performance.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of his numbers in the pocket and all that stuff are very impressive right now. So I have a lot of faith in Zach Wilson. 60, 65% is not a slight at him. That's 60% trying to be a top 10 quarterback. It's not just, oh, he's a decent quarterback. Like, we don't want Kirk Cousins. We want better than that. Like, you need to be, in my opinion, that top 10 guy to really build around, because when you get stuck in purgatory with guys like Kirk Cousins, look at the Vikings, so nonetheless, anything else to add from Zach before we run through? I'm sure he's going to come up in a little bit again, but nonetheless, anything else to add from Zach's performance?
No, I think I'm really pleased with him through 2 games. And there's a lot of games left. He has to maintain it, but I think already through 2 games, we've kind of seen a little bit of everything. I think we saw a game where he didn't have his best stuff to start, and he rebounded and really, I think, made great adjustments in the second half. To Minkah Fitzpatrick and his lurking, he showed a better feel for that and being able to manipulate him, get the ball past him. So we saw stuff like that, in-game adjustments. And then the fourth quarter clutch factor where he had to make big-time throws and he had to pass the ball at a high volume, play after play. And he came through and was able to do that. And then we saw a game where he was supported very well and didn't have to carry the team, but just executed his role and let the playmakers make plays and got the ball where it needed to go. So I think we've seen a nice balance of some of the different things you want to see from him. And we'll see as the season goes on, as he continues to get these challenges, if he can, continue to show up in the fourth quarter when he needs to, or continue to bounce back from rough first halves, or continue to just execute his role when the rest of the team doesn't demand too much of him. So I think we've seen a lot so far. Now it's just about maintaining it. And I think the missing factor we haven't really seen yet is probably the downfield explosiveness. And there have been some close calls.
It'll happen.
Breece Hall play outside the pocket against Pittsburgh. And then the Conklin one in this game, just underthrown both of those. And, I think ideally you would like one of those to be caught between a couple of contested 50-50 balls. But, those are still opportunities that other quarterbacks aren't creating, with the ability to dodge those sacks and then get up, a 40-yard pass that's a 50-50 ball. It's like Joe Flacco's not creating that. And I think probably at least half of the starting quarterbacks in the league aren't doing that. So just to create those opportunities is good, and eventually they'll be capitalized upon.
Oh, there's absolutely no shot we win that Steelers game if it's Joe Flacco. Like the amount of pressure he dodged in that game. Like, I don't know what the numbers are, but like how many situations were we in like third or fourth and long and he converted like in that fourth quarter? Like it was ridiculous. So the thing with Zach Wilson is like, you have some of the frustrating plays where his he obviously will miss a pass, but like from pretty much the Texans game and like some of the Texans game, but pretty much past that, like his mental processing to me has been good and improving. And for a guy who's only played 14 or 15 games, like he still has a lot of room to grow. So, and then you'll hit those plays where it's, I think like Aaron Rodgers mentioned it, like you got to hit the layups and all this stuff. Like, and I'm paraphrasing, but like hit those big plays 3 or 4 times a game. The rest of it standing in the pocket, delivering, going through your reads quickly, good accuracy, that stuff. Like the other stuff will come. But again, like I don't know how many sacks he dodged in that Steelers game, but like even in this game, the Conklin play again, how many guys are making that play, pump faking him to jump in the air, rolling out to the right and chucking the ball deep. Like he has that ability, but he also has the ability to stand in the pocket, and he has, I would say, a near elite release in terms of the quickness. He can get rid of that ball, and elite power, or near elite power, and how he could deliver it. And Sabo broke it down. comeback route against the Steelers, like not a lot of guys are making that throw. Like it was ridiculous, that anticipation and the arm talent he showed on that. So you have great arm talent, you have great mobility, but you also have a guy who could stand in the pocket and deliver it really quickly because of his release. Like he could be a very good quarterback, and he has the talent to be top 10. So I don't think 65% shot is us slighting him. I think that's honestly very positive. So nonetheless, let's keep going on in the chat. I guess we'll bring up Breece Hall next because we got asked about this. High Sports, I love Hall, but what do you think about his vision? Seems that's his only weakness. At first, it was a little bit of a weakness to me. Again, I thought he was bouncing runs to the outside a little bit more than he should have, where he could have hit it to the inside for a couple of more yards, but I think he was trying to kind of like make that explosive play. But this game, I didn't really notice. And again, I did shotgun this review. I will preface it by saying that. I didn't notice any problems with vision this game, and obviously he dominated. 18 rushes, 97 yards, 5.4 yard average, 1 touchdown, 2 receptions for 100 yards. He had that 1 pass pro lapse where he allowed, I don't know if it was the first or second sack on Wilson, but he like fills in. I forget if it was between the center and the right guard or the right guard and the right tackle, but he kind of, he didn't play it well. Like he didn't necessarily not pick up his assignment, but he didn't play the block very well, and he allowed a sack. So I wanted to see him improve his pass pro a little bit, but you're seeing why the Jets drafted him as high as they did. Like he could be an elite playmaker at the running back position for the Jets. So I think his vision is not necessarily a weakness, but it's not necessarily a strength at this point. But I have seen improvements at least the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think in this game you saw a lot of vision improvement. There was one play specifically where he showed like really good stop-start speed and just quickly being able to scan the line where he, I think it was an outside zone play. He just took the hand off, just immediately stopped and found the hole on the C gap in the backside between Uzama and Barrett Tucker.
I think it was a wind back. I think it was a wind back run, which we could discuss. But nonetheless, I
still think there was some improvement in that game.
No, he immediately cuts into the C gap. He waits for a block to develop. He sees that guy like flashes helmet to the outside, presses up to through the middle, and then reads another a block. Like he has near elite athleticism. I wouldn't say it's elite, but like his contact balance, his ability to explode, his patience at times. Obviously, we're seeing him drag defenders from the 20 to the 1 yard line. Like that was very impressive from Breece Hall. But I don't think he's his finished product yet. But like I think we're all ecstatic with him. Which, by the way, Nania, I don't know if you are a consistent voter for Rookie of the Week. Did you vote for either one of Breece or Sauce? We'll get to Sauce in a little bit, but who are you throwing votes in for? Is it going to be Breece 2 weeks in a row?
I think I did vote. I think I voted for Sauce just because I wanted to share the love a little bit. But it would be funny because I think Breece deserves it a lot more than he did last week. I think he only had, 60-something yards, although he did at the game-winning touchdown. So it would be weird, but I would just like to spread it around so you could say that 3 rookies have already gotten it.
That's kind of my rationale to it. It's like, listen, he won it last week when he wasn't supposed to, so him and Sauce are close this week. Let's get it to Sauce so he has one. Because I think for Breece, it'll be a lot easier for him to win a couple more because he's gonna have a couple more 100-yard games. Like it's gonna happen. He's going to explode. A couple more games where Sauce is like he could have a great cornerback game, get 1 pass deflection.
Yeah, and he's only going to be on there if he gets a pick in the safety, which is what he has this week. So it's going to be a lot harder for him to get back there.
So this might be his only shot. Maybe he'll have another game where it's like a pick 6, but like past that, I can't really see him winning it. Where Breece Hall, he's gonna get on the ballot at least another 4 or 5 times, and Jets fans are a bunch of psychopaths, so he'll probably win it another 4 times. Unless it's like Garrett Wilson, like, oh shit, it's either one of those guys. But no, Breece has been great. Again, he stacks up to those running backs who were taken really high in the last 5 to 10 years. It's just there's even lesser than those years, I don't know what the terminology is. The running back position is taking lower than it was even a couple of years ago, where I think if he was drafted in 2013, 14, 15 with like the Todd Gurley's and stuff, like he would have been a first-round pick. And again, we're seeing why Joe Douglas drafted him. And I know, we had needs at safety, we had needs at linebacker, but I think a lot of Jets fans were like, listen, the offensive line is pretty solid, receivers are pretty solid, tight end solid. Like adding that another elite playmaker is just going to help out Zach Wilson more. And I don't think you can argue that Breece Hall helped out the offense and Zach Wilson plenty this game. Like this is what we expected of him. And this is only game 5. Like he's going to improve. So Anything else to add on Brees?
Oh yeah, I think he's been a really good compliment to Zach Wilson. And the point you made earlier, I think just the trust that Zach Wilson could have that he can make a play is a really important factor, and it's something that's gained through the plays that he makes when he does get the ball. The quarterback sees that. He sees what Brees Hall does when he throws in the ball, and that I think kind of registers in the just in his brain that I, more so than other players, I could throw the ball to this guy and he's going to make plays. And I think it makes you more comfortable and more apt to take those checkdowns and easy throws when you're confident that that guy is a really special playmaker. Yeah,
for sure. Again, when you don't have to force that 15-yard dig when you can dump it off to Brees for 2 yards and you can take it 25. It's really nice to have that confidence in your running backs and your checkdowns. You don't have a lot of confidence checking the ball down to Frank Gore like Sam Darnold had when he was a young player. So Kev Chada, late here when I missed. This was an hour ago, so I'm sure you caught up. AVT is the best tackle and guard on the team. This is factual, I would say. Which is it's going to be interesting. I guess we can hit that quickly if you want to. What's your opinions on that conundrum? Him playing tackle, staying at tackle, or moving back to guard? Let's say I have no idea when Remmers or I don't even know how to pronounce the other guy's name. Agbue or whatever his name is. Are they going to play right tackle? He moves back. Like, what are your thoughts on AVT tackle versus AVT the guard?
Well, it's a very interesting situation because this is. It's a luxury that a lot of teams don't get. It's a good problem. This guy is now showing you that he can play well at 4 different positions. So it's, I think ideally at some point you want him to settle in at a position, but where that position comes is, going to depend on other guys' health and how they're playing. And, looking at this season specifically, it seems like he is going to have to do some movement because eventually Fant's going to come back. Mitchell's going to come back. So, I feel like there's a good chance that for this year, the combination they had in this Miami game might be their best one because I think Herbig's playing solid. And, when Fant comes back, is, a month of rest going to be enough for him to get back to peak form? Because he was really bad when he was playing. And it does seem like that was partially due to injury. But, again, is he going to be all the way back once he returns? I'm not totally sure about that. So, is Fant one of your best 5 this year? That's not guaranteed. So then you have Herbig versus Mitchell. Do you want to have Herbig at guard, AVT at tackle, or AVT at guard and Mitchell at tackle? And I just look at how Herbig has played versus Mitchell. And, Mitchell was a pleasant surprise when he was playing, but I think Herbig has been a better guard than Mitchell was at tackle. And then AVT kind of hasn't really shown a drop off. So based on that, I would go with Herbig. So I think this combination they just had might be their best unit this year, but we'll see how it plays out. Long term, though, I think I still want to see more from AVT at tackle. Just more good games, stack them up before I'm certain he could do it because I feel pretty certain he's a good guard. But at tackle, there is the arm length limitations, and I know it might be nitpicking because it's a 2 inches on his arms or whatever. But there is a reason teams
matters.
It does matter. There's a reason he wasn't just drafted as a pure tackle despite playing there and playing well in his final season. It's because that arm length can come into play. And I don't think we've seen him play the greatest edge competition yet while at tackle. So I would like to see him stack up some more good games, play well against top tier edge rushers before I pencil him in as, okay, long term, he can be just as good there as he can at guard. But for the near future, I think this unit that they just had against the Dolphins might be their best group. Would you agree with that?
It's a conundrum. It really is because is Herbig here after this year? Like that's another question too. Like do you keep Herbig at right guard? Obviously Tomlinson's going to be here.
I'm going to check, but I don't think he is.
Yeah. So do you keep McGovern? Like McGovern, let's just say McGovern stays. Obviously Tomlinson's going to be here. And now, let's say. Okay, let's even say they don't resign him. They do. Like it's again that's a part of the conundrum. But let's say you do want to move AVT back, but you want to stay with your best lineup this year. Do you play AVT at right tackle for the next, whatever it is, 13 weeks or whatever? I can't do math. 13 weeks of the season, and then move him back to guard next year, like, do you want to start to get him comfortable at a spot? Like, it's not to say he can't, move around, but like we want him to stick at a spot. But like you said, like he doesn't necessarily have the ideal arm length, and he hasn't been going against elite defensive linemen. But at the same time, like guys have physical limitations and are Hall of Famers. Like, Terrell Suggs is a great example of a guy who's like physically limited, but it's probably going to, I don't know if he's not necessarily a Hall of Famer, but he's near that level. Like he's a very, very, good player. So to me, I think AVT could be a very, very solid tackle, but I think he could be a all-pro guard. So I think ideally you want to get him back to guard, but at the same time, if he plays right tackle for the rest of the year, do you want to just keep him there? Like, okay, we're fine with a very, 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 very good Pro Bowl level guard. Maybe he's never all pro, or a tackle. Maybe he's a Pro Bowl tackle, not an all pro. And obviously that's not a good qualification because Pro Bowl is bullshit, but you kind of get what I'm saying. But with that being said now too, like, let's say you keep him at right tackle. What happens with Mitchell? Do you try to move Mitchell? He's never played left tackle. But Dwayne Brown's on the left side. Like, so Dwayne Brown's going to be here next year as well. So like there are so many moving pieces of the offensive line between guard and all this stuff. I think that their best combination right now is probably Brown, Tomlinson, obviously McGovern, Herbig, and ABT. And I think there's a possibility that if Fant gets healthy, you move him back to right tackle, him healthy. Is he a better right tackle than Herbig is a guard? I would probably argue yes. And you move AVT back to right guard and get him comfortable at that spot. But the Jets have to make a decision relatively soon because I don't think you want to keep moving him around. It's great he could do it. It's great he has that flexibility, but let him get comfy, at right guard for the Jets. But do they do that? Do they pull the trigger on an offensive line that worked pretty well together in this last game and opened up some good holes for this run game, and then move him back to right tackle or right guard week 7, 8? Like it's really interesting to see what's going to happen. What are your long-term plans for Fant? Have you had contract discussions that no, screw this, I'm not signing with you guys? Or I'm not signing with you guys. Okay, keep Herbig at right guard or keep him at right tackle. Like it is, I don't know. That's the answer. I don't know what they're gonna do. It's gonna be interesting to watch. Buongiorno, Giuseppe Blewett. Let's go. Welcome back. Joe was in the house for the Dolphins game. The atmosphere was awesome. Hoping the pass game is even better from the outside our game. From the outside our game, I think the pass game will be even better if the Jets win one of the next two. I think if they lose the next two, it will not be as good. If they win one of the next two and you're fighting for 5 wins going into the bye week, that game is going to be nuts to me. The best game I've ever been to in terms of crowd noise was by far not even close to the Pats home opener in 2009. It was vibrating. Like you felt vibrate. It was ridiculous. 2015 Eric Decker touchdown was a really good one. I wish I was there for the Dolphins game, but I'm hoping the Jets can pull out one of these next two. Because I will be at the Pats game, but I'm having a Halloween party the night before, so I might go, and I might be hurting a little bit, but I'll rally. I'll be there. J1 for the Pats game. I might need a little bit more of a. Usually our rule is you shotgun or you take a shot at 8:00 in the morning as soon as you get there. I might have to push that till 9 of that day, but we'll see. Yoshi, all Miami sports fans are fair weather fans. Just look at the Heat fans that left the NBA Finals before they staged the epic comeback, then wanted to come back into the arena. Unbelievable. Yeah, I actually saw that, Yoshi. Miami fans suck. They do. I hate Dolphins fans more than any other fan base in the NFL. I respect the Bills, and listen, like people hate the Pats fans. If we won 6 Super Bowls in the last 20 years, whatever it's been, we've probably talked a little bit of shit too. So I get that. We talk shit. We're 3-2. We're talking shit to people. So imagine having Tom Brady. But yeah. Dolphins fans have no reason to talk shit. So. Let's go. Welcome back, Joe. Was so pumped in the Finns game, hoping that. Oh, okay. You kind of. Kyle Smith is a good host. Kyle Smith is a very good host. Kyle Smith used to host the AFC East Bros, and then it didn't. I'm not going to reveal all that behind the scenes stuff, but the show discontinued. But he was a host for years on that show. It was a great video or a great show. Joey breakdowns. I don't know. I'm not going to try to pronounce that. Kyle Nania did great. Yes. More sauce. I have the sauce chain. I will be rocking the sauce jersey and the sauce chain at the game. So I'm very excited. My rule is, and Nania now has a rule because the Jets have been winning a little bit. Yeah. Nania rocks the same jersey that the Jets wear when he goes to the home games for me, when I go, I completely agree. I do the same exact thing. When they're home wearing white, I wear white. When they're wearing green, I wear green. That's just how I do it. Crazy, sports fan, again, fanatics. When I go to away games, my rule is you have to try to wear a color that the other team does not have, because I don't want to wear green at a Packers game because I'll blend in with all the other green, or white because they have white jerseys. So I have to wear black to stand out. That's my rule. So sauce jersey is a must. Nani, we have to get you to a away game eventually, my friend.
Yeah, I mean, I went to the Panthers game last year. Obviously, I saw you there. Prior to that, I had gone to Cleveland in 2016 and Dallas in 2015. That is my road game track record. Also, the 2019 preseason Falcons game.
And they were ugly away games.
Yeah, those are some ugly games, but 2 of them were wins. So 2-1 record.
Wasn't the Cowboys game? They played like a backup quarterback, right? Yeah,
it was Kellen Moore, who's
Kellen Moore.
Now they're OC, right?
Yeah, and even the 2017 Browns, was that the Quincy Enunwa game?
2016, yeah, that was a Quincy Enunwa touchdown. It was
he broke like 4 tackles
versus McCown. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
But yeah, on the jersey thing, so the Jets are now 3-0, and I match their jersey color, which obviously has all been white jerseys this year. And 0-2, and I don't match them. But I know I sent you some pictures and videos of me at the game. I had my black Cool Your Jets t-shirt on, but I did wear my white Zach Wilson jersey to the game. It's just where I was sitting, like the sun was beating down. It was too hot, so I just had to take it off.
You got to take one for the team, though. You got to rock the jersey the entire time.
I wore it to the game.
What happened? What would happen if they come back? If the Dolphins came back and won that game, it would be all your fault. So you gotta hold it out. But
that's true. Process over results.
Yeah. I gotta exactly. I have to, like I said, the away games, I always got to rock a different color. So green will not be there for the at the Pats game or at the Packers game. I love, this is from Jesse. I love that they're running the ball 25 times a game. But what is Quinn's snap percentage or snap counts in the past couple of games, which we can hit on at least a little bit now. Nania. Crazy fucking idea I have or crazy idea all Jets fans have, that the Jets' best players should play more snaps.
Yeah.
This game, the Jets' best defensive players on the defensive line, at least, played more snaps, and holy shit, they got more pressure and they hit the quarterback, which obviously it has some effect with the bad offensive line and not necessarily a quarterback who is going to process and get the ball out as quick as Tua or Teddy would. You have to factor that in. To be fair. But I think Q played near 70. JFM was like 66, and Lawson was like 72 or something like that.
Yeah. Williams was at a 70%. That was his career high under Ulbrich. Lawson 73% season high. Franklin Myers 66, which is also season high. There was one game here he was under 50. So yeah, they pumped it up this game.
Was that JFM? Sorry, JFM was under 50?
Yeah, JFM 66. He had a game. He was under 50 a couple weeks ago. So
I think they pumped it up. The Steelers or the Bengals game. It's like 48%. You're paying $14 million to play 40% of snaps.
Might have been the Bengals game. I'm looking at it right now. Steelers was 48. Browns actually was 46. So JFM was being also criminally underplayed. We didn't give him as much attention because Quinnen was drawing most of it, but they did kind of atone for that. I still think Williams could go a little bit higher because you look at the Jeffrey Simmons, Grady Jarrett, Chris Jones, Buckner, all these guys. They're averaging 75, 80, let alone 70 being Quinnen's absolute peak. So I think it could still go a little bit higher. You can get him out there for another series or 2 per game, but they did take a step in the right direction here. There was a lot more of the big three, and Martin, Shepard, and Thomas played season lows. So they did push some more snaps to the more talented guys in this one.
Yeah, no, and I would prefer Q and like Lawson. Those guys would pick more like 75%. But like at the end of the day, if he told me 70%, I would sign the dotted line for that. Like I'm okay with that rotation. But you're seeing Q play like 58% or 60, or JFM plays 46 or 48. It's just bullshit. It really is. I think Ulbrich was thinking too hard. I know you went off on that a couple of weeks ago. It's just play your best players. Now in terms of the defensive line, getting to that, I guess at this point, Lawson. 7 quarterback hits and a sack, which I think is like nearly like a record for the Jets, or ties a record.
The 7 QB hits is a Jets record since 2006 when they started tracking that.
Now, to be fair, I don't know who the left. I don't know exactly who came in for Armstead. He is
our boy Brandon Shell.
Okay. Oh, really? Well, did he ever play left tackle though? He was a right tackle Right? He only played right tackle.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think he was still right tackle in Seattle.
Which, by the way, I don't know who sent it to me, and I apologize. I worked midnight last night. I'm only like 2 hours of sleep, but nonetheless, there was some bozo who was like, we're giving AVT too much credit. At the end of the day, you're just blocking the guy in front of you. Strength versus strength. Like, can't we say that with anything? Like, didn't Michael Jordan just put a ball through a hoop? Like, what the fuck are we talking about? Like, it's at the end of the day, you can say that and make it feel so simple. Like, Nani, you just got to shoot this ball through the cylinder. It's easy, right? Like, why can't we all be Steph Curry?
Skill.
Yeah, no, like grown man strength versus grown man strength. Okay, go fight Conor fucking McGregor. Like, all you do is punch him in the face, right? Like, it's easy. So stupid. But nonetheless, Lawson, 7 quarterbacks hits and a sack. He is obviously exploding. He forced the hold on Armstead with that swinging rip. To me, he had like a couple of plays where he's running like a running hump move, which you don't typically see, like a running hump. Like, typically with a hump move, like, guys will set it up. They'll throw a rip, and you'll get a guy leaning a little bit where he's leaning to the side that he's trying to rip, and then guys kind of displace that arm from what side they're on, and then throw that hump and then get to the other side. Lawson does it like as he's running, which I've never really seen before, but to me, he seems a little bit more decisive. He's using speed to power a little bit. I saw some times where he used like speed to power to speed this game. Better use of the hands, so he is definitely showing up, which is great. We have a lot of these guys who, again, it's the fandom versus like the correct thought process is like, he's not producing, we're paying him, this fucking sucks. But like, how often do we say like, okay, guys coming off Achilles injuries, like they take a little bit to bounce back? Even a year, he was slow to start the season, but now he's obviously dominating. Again, it helps he's playing Brandon Shell, but nonetheless, that was good. Q had the half sack. He had the fumble recovery where he shit whipped Tyreek Hill, which is great. JFM had 5 quarterback hits and a half sack. He had that hit on Skylar. I'm going to call him Skylar. Yeah, Skylar Thompson. I forgot the last name for a second, but he had that hit where it led to the sauce pick. Yeah. So he had a hell of a game. And then you had Rankins, who played well this game, and you also had Huff, who I don't know what the snap percentage of that he played, but I know in the Steelers game he had 10 snaps, 8 pressures, or 7 no, it wasn't that high. It was something ridiculous in the Steelers game. So the defensive line that was so highly touted that we were kind of frustrated with early because they invested a lot of capital, both draft pick and money-wise, into this group, didn't necessarily produce. And now we're seeing the fruits of it. Now, with that being said, it is the Miami Dolphins against a third-string quarterback who don't have the best offensive line. They need to produce against – who are some of the better offensive lines we have coming up? You want to see them produce against
the Packers are a good O-line.
Okay, so let's produce first the Packers. But overall, your thoughts on Lawson, JFM, Rankins, all these guys who balled out this game.
Yeah, I mean, I think this was the official breakout game, and I know the sacks weren't necessarily there, but whatever. Like, the pressure was very impactful in this game. I mean, You just look at the Sauce interception. I think it's a perfect example of how pressure can be enormous regardless of the sacks. Like, JFM created that, and great play by Sauce, but JFM getting that hit is what made that such a lightly thrown ball that he could undercut and pick off.
It's not a pick if JFM doesn't hit him.
Yeah, for sure. Likely be a deflection, I would say, but probably not a pick without that. And then Lawson also had early in the game on Armstead before he went out. He beat him around the corner for maybe a sack. And he got held, and that created 3rd and 20. So that's essentially a sack for all intents and purposes. So,
and did they convert that too? I think they might have converted that play. It got called back, right? If I might be wrong though.
I'm not sure they did. I have to look back on it, but I mean, you mentioned Huff. I mean, he's out there as the pure pass rush specialist. He's never playing in run situations. It's all pass rush, and it's working great for him because, I mean, he's a good player, and I could see him playing more snaps than that. But in the role they have him right now, every time he goes out there, he's well rested, and he's just going full throttle. I mean, right now, according to Next Gen Stats, he's the fastest average get off time of any edge rusher in the league. So, he's well rested. He's getting out there with a full tank of gas. He's emptying it every single play, and you're seeing great reps from him. Great.
Did you already reference how many snaps did he have this game? I don't know if you already said that. I apologize if you already said that.
First game, he had 9. This one was 15. So that's 14% to 22% in this game.
Listen, if you're going to get a situational edge rusher for UDFA who's going to create the amount of pressure he does, that's a slam dunk UDFA pickup. And And I know I don't want to get into the 2020 class, but at the end of the day, if he's another guy who you could kind of contribute to that class, like it saves it a little bit because listen, obviously that class is a little bit of a shit show, but people they don't really think of Huff in that class. And I consider UDFA's part of the class, and he's been balling out. Now, were there any reps? And again, I shock on the review. We need to see some reps of Q, JFM, Huff, and Lawson rushing the passer, which hopefully they do with some of these leads that hopefully they're going to be encountering as they become a team who's more both gets off to a faster start, doesn't shit the bed to end the second half. And I know that the Jets are one of the better teams in the fourth quarter, but they also really shit the bed in the third. So we need to see a young Jets team, which we hope to see. And Salah kind of referenced that, like, it's good to see that these guys are maybe learning a bit through the game. That's why they're dominating in the fourth quarter. There's going to be games where they string it out first, second, third, and fourth. And that's when we're going to see the Jets really blow some teams out. Because, this game, you look at the score, it looked like a blowout. Was it really? No. Like towards the end of the game, yes, it was, but it wasn't early on. But we need to see some of that combination. I don't know if they played any reps together this year, that four.
Yeah, they actually have had that quite a bit. I mean, good number of the Huff reps they've had the entire quartet out there, and some of them, or most of them, I think Frankel Myers has kicked inside. So that combination has been working good for them these two games.
Now, what would you do? Do you think that Huff is a guy who's going to play over JJ in these reps? Because or in the games where JJ is going to be healthy, because obviously Huff, the first 2-3 games was inactive, which should be a criminal act, but nonetheless, especially how he's producing now. But once JJ comes back, do you think his snap count falls off? Because we like JJ, and JJ's been really good in the run game. Pass game, he still needs work to me. I know he has like a sack and a half, whatever it is, but to me, I am bar none taking Huff as a rusher over JJ in a pass situation.
Yeah, no, I agree, but I think based on what we've seen so far, it might be Martin who takes the hit, because first game that Huff played against the Steelers, Johnson was still at 22 snaps, which is 34%. That's basically on par with what he's had the whole season. That's actually tied for his most. But Martin is the guy who really took a slice in this game. He only played 11 snaps, 16%. Prior to that, he was playing about 24, 23 snaps a game. So he basically got his time cut in half. So I think Martin might be the guy who kind of Huff cuts into. And Johnson should be able to keep that, 30% sort of role, leaning towards rundowns. So we'll see how they manage it.
Yeah, and the thing that you mentioned, and it's true, like we need to see, and while it's great that, they're seeing more snaps, Q and JFM and Lawson and even Huff at this point, and we want to see it at least stay at 70%, hopefully 75, 80, like you were saying. And I want to ask you about some numbers on Q, if you have any of those, like in terms of like guys who we stack him up against, because again, like we talk about him being, as high of a pick as he was, like he was a solid player, but we need him to be elite to justify that pick. And I think he's getting into that range this year. So if you could pull up those numbers. But with that being said, we also need more from the guys who are backups. Like Shepard and Thomas are doing pretty much nothing when they're in the game. So we need to see more from those guys. I think Thomas will round out. I think he's a decent backup to have. Shepard, I don't get why he's still on the team, but nonetheless, what are Q's numbers saying? You talk about Lawson. You talked about, Huff having like elite get off time, and Lawson's obviously having, tying records and all this stuff for hits in the game and pressures for the Jets. What are Q's numbers saying about him stacking up against some of the Jeffrey Simmonses and, Aaron Donalds of the world?
No, the numbers are really good right now. I mean, especially relative to the playing time. Right now, he's 5th at the position for interior D lineman in pressures. Yeah. He's got 17 of those, and that's despite him being 31st in the number of snaps he's rushed the quarterback. So he's drastically outperforming the playing time they're giving him. I mean, just to compare like his playing time versus some of the guys who are in the same production stratosphere. So top 5 in interior D-line pressures. You have Aaron Donald, Jeffrey Simmons, Chris Jones, Grady Jarrett. Then Quinnen's tied with Dexter Lawrence and Kenny Clark. Quinnen's at 123 pass rush snaps. Everyone else in that group is at least 150, except Kenny Clark, 134. So still 11 more than Quinnen. So if he were playing more snaps, he could easily be making a case to be number 1 in that category in terms of pressures. So, and also the sacks are there. He's got 3 of those, and two 2 of those are half sacks, so technically he has 4 sacks. So right now he's playing really well.
Now, with that being said, okay, he extrapolated, or this is continued out through the rest of the year. Are we giving him, $20 million a year contract? 5 years, $100 million for, I don't know, 55, 60 guaranteed. Like, are we getting to that point with Q? And again, I'm glad because I was a very big Q supporter coming out, and he looked good his first year. Second year, I thought it was even better. Third year, massive dip. In my opinion, I thought his second year was much better than his third year. And it came to the point where people are like, we can't really sign this guy, but if he keeps producing the way he is, you're talking about him kind of stacking up with the best of the best. I think it's a lock that they're going to sign this guy, right? Like I know he's not a Joe Douglas guy, but homegrown, seems like a good dude. So I'm definitely happy for him. I think he's going to deserve that type of contract. Not necessarily that exact number, but somewhere right around that, right?
Yeah, I mean, we've had this discussion a lot, and I think before this year was definitely up in the air. Third season didn't build on that second year like we hoped. But I think the way he's playing right now is the type of Quinn Williams you want to see to justify that contract, and the Quinn Williams you hoped you were getting with that third overall pick. I mean, he is just omnipresent in both phases when you're watching the game. And even, the run game, like regardless of how many tackles he makes, just the penetration he gets, the way he eats up blocks, makes things so much easier for everyone else. Just doesn't let the guard get to the second level. He makes the running back redirect, and it's just he's such a positive impact.
Was that the which, by the way, I think this is what we're gonna do, Nania. We're gonna go through the rest of the game, and then we're gonna preview the Packers game. I'm gonna let you go because there is an hour and a half of chats that I know you don't have time for. I do. I owe you guys time, so I'll be here. But I'm gonna keep running through the game with Nania. I don't want to take up too much of his time. But I think was that the Steelers game where you saw, I don't know if it was I think it was a draw or some type of delayed handoff. Maybe it was a trap or a wham or something like that. But Q pushes the center or the guard back 3 yards into the backfield. The running back runs into the blocker's back, redirects, and then gets I don't know if you got to the line of scrimmage or whatever it was, but it's never going to show up on the stat sheet. And that's why it's process versus results. The result is he didn't make a tackle. The process was he blew up the play, and let another teammate make a tackle. He has been elite in the run game and in the pass game. So we've been big supporters of Q, and I'm happy he's finally kind of taking those strides. And we should have assumed that at least a little bit last year. He's going from a 3-4 to a 4-3, different role. But I think this scheme fits him even better, and I think you're going to continue to see him explode, and hopefully he gets those numbers up a little bit more with the top guys with more snaps. You have anything else to add to Q before we get to the offensive line and kind of run out the rest of the offense?
No, I mean, I think he's playing up to what you want him to play up to justify the contract he'll probably ask for. I would hope he continues to play more snaps, step in the right direction this week, but still a little low for me. So hopefully he plays more. I mean, I will say after the game against Miami, I went out by where the players exit and walk towards to the parking lot and all that. And Ulbrich was walking by, and I said, "Play Quinn and more snaps." So maybe he'll get the message.
Did he give you a little grin and nod? Or
he didn't acknowledge.
Yeah, no, of course, But nonetheless, do you have any other defensive line nuggets you want to add, stats or anything like that from this game? I know you kind of threw out some other numbers, but I want to give you your due diligence if you have any other numbers to throw out on the defensive line.
I mean, I think it was an overall great performance. I think it should just be acknowledged how dominant it was. Thompson was the most pressured quarterback this week at 60% of his dropbacks. And that was not only the highest rate in this week, it was the highest rate of any game this season. So this was what you wanted to see. It's what you hoped to see going to last year when you hoped, Lawson would be healthy, and then going into this year when you knew you'd have everybody. This is the type of defensive line performance where you're like, this is why we're going to go 4-man rush and not blitz a lot and run our defense through this aggressive attacking D-line. So this was truly dominant performance. And yes, not the greatest opponent, but how many times have the Jets played a bad tackle or a bad offensive line? You're like, oh, we're going to eat this game. Then they do nothing.
They one sack.
I've done what Carl Lawson did. He's playing Brandon Shell, but I don't think Lorenzo Malden or Quinn Coples is going to get 7 quarterback hits regardless of who they're playing. So
You're so right on that. Like, there's been so many years where like the Jets were sort of like a good defensive line, and it's like, oh, terrible offensive line, 32 in pass block. We're gonna get a ton of sacks. The quarterback's like sitting there, like, making fucking eggs. It's like, what are you doing? Like, what are we doing here? So yeah, but you combine that like near elite pass rush. And that this week it was elite, but like, let's say it's not 60%. It's, I don't know what the exact numbers are for elite, but like 45, 50%, consistently throughout the year. And you compare that, or you pair that with in what right now is an elite corner duo. Like, you're talking about what should be a really good defense. And then you go into next year, you add a safety, you add a linebacker, you re-sign Quan, you have Quincy as a backup. You have Whitehead, and I don't know who's a mid-level free safety. Like, you're looking at defense, going to be really damn good. They're good in the important positions right now, and that's why we're seeing them play as well as they are. Now, it's going to be a much different test. You're talking about Kenny Pickett and Mitch Trubisky and Skylar Thompson, and you're going now to play Aaron Rodgers. Hopefully they can keep doing the same thing. Now, with the other skill position groups in the offense, receivers, I shock on the shit out of this game. So I didn't like watch them run routes individually. Like, oh, he was open when they didn't see him. Like, I didn't have time, admittedly, to see that. Receivers didn't really see too much. They really relied on the run game. And then tight ends, Conklin, 0 catches. Of course, the freaking week I had to start in fantasy. Uzama, 2 catches, which weren't really much of anything. He had that really bad missed block on Ingram on the second drive, or maybe it was the first. I think it was the second drive, right? But then he had a face mask on Hall. I think it's like another Zorro run. The Jets are running a lot of which go to the film shows where I explain what a wineback is, what a Zorro is. They're running a lot of those staples of this like Shanahan scheme. They executed it well, but we didn't really see much from the receivers or tight ends. Now, obviously, you had a little bit more time to digest it. Did you see anything stats, film-wise, that stuck out about these the other skill position groups?
I mean, I think in this game, like the first few games of the year, I think there was a ton of, there's a lot of Garrett Wilson and Elijah Moore getting open, and they're not going to capitalize. I think this game was probably the best game of the year in terms of what was open being capitalized on. I think Wilson did a good job of finding what was open and hitting it. So, I mean, I think this was a solid game from them. They caught most of the balls that were thrown to them. I mean, Conklin could have come up with that jump ball down the field. Other than that, I don't remember a ton of bad drops in this game, or really any bad drops. I mean, maybe Moore could have caught that low pass by Wilson, but that would have been really difficult.
Yeah.
He's not catching that ball. I think it was a solid game for the receivers. And actually, another quick thing on Wilson, like this kind of came up for me earlier. Like the pass to Breece Hall, yes, it's wide open, but just think back to the Patriots game last year when Elijah Moore ran that, I think it was a wheel route, but he was wide open, should have been a touchdown, but Wilson completes it to him, but he leads him into the sideline.
Yep.
And it's like a 20-yard catch instead of a 40-yard touchdown. So,
yep.
like yes, those throws are open and completing it isn't hard, but there's still a level to it where you have to throw it accurately so you can get the most out of it. Yeah. And lead him in stride so he can maximize that yards after the catch. And I think he did that with the Breece Hall pass to allow him to keep that head of steam to get the yak he eventually did. So I think just comparing that play to the Elijah Moore game last year, which was also his second game of last season, is a nice sign of progress that he's making those easy throws more efficiently.
That's a great point too. I completely forgot about that play, but you're right. It was like a 40-45 yard touchdown easily if he puts it in stride, but he let him completely to the sideline. Elijah wanted to run out of bounds instead of running wide open for a touchdown. So that is a great point in terms of like Zach Wilson putting it on Breece Hall. And the only thing is like Wilson had that really nice play. Was it third and long or third and relatively long where he broke like a tackle to get a first down, a tackle or two? That was a nice play by Wilson, showing again an elite yak that he has.
Yeah.
I want to see him more in situations where he has the ball in space. And Elijah Moore, I will criticize him for that one play where he didn't get his feet in bounds. He had every opportunity to get his feet in bounds for a first down where Zach Wilson created after the play, and he wasn't able to bring it in. Offensive line, to me, you have Brown, who, again, just based on watching quickly, was solid for his first game back. Again, quantifying that is his first game back. Tomlinson was okay. I think this was probably his best game. I think I don't know what the numbers say. He did allow the hit where there was a play. I don't know exactly what the concept was, but Garrett Wilson was open. And he did a terrible job passing off I worked out a slanting 3-tech to Connor McGovern. McGovern, I remember, had a linebacker right over top of him. And you have Tomlinson, who has a 3-tech to his left. And while the offensive line was sliding to their left, he has to recognize that McGovern has a guy over top of him. So he's going to be stuck a little bit more inside. And he just lets the guy cross his face and just expects, McGovern to just pick it up. What if the linebacker who was pressing on McGovern blitzed? Like, you got to pick up that slanter at least enough to where the point where you can slow him down and see if McGovern's locked on that linebacker. Because if he was, it had absolutely no shot of getting blocked. So he has some mental lapses still that are frustrating for a guy who's as veteran as he is. So I think this is probably his best game, but I'm still not blown away by Tomlinson. Past that, I thought McGovern was okay. I thought Herbig was solid, but he did have that bad miss block on the which would have put Breece Hall over the 200 all-purpose yards. But he had that, I think it was like a loss of 5, where he missed the block pretty badly in the run game. He's never going to be considered athletic. He's never going to be considered average athletically. He's below average athletically, so he'll struggle with some guys like slanting and crossing his face. And then obviously you had AVT, who I think you put up a clip on Twitter of him like getting out on a pole. You considered it an elite game, for playing your first game at right tackle, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think this was the best offensive line game all around. I think the run blocking was it was really solid for the most part. It wasn't the most consistent run game. It was great overall, but they just first few run plays, or they took a little bit to get going. That's part of why they had those. They didn't produce much offensively the first few drives, so it took a little bit for the run game to get going. But once they did, I think it was they were pretty cohesive and created some good holes. AVT, I think, was. I mean, even if you don't account for the fact that it was his first game, I think it was a very, very solid tackle performance. And then you throw in the fact that it is his first game there, and it's just mind-blowing. So he is easily their most valuable player right now. Best argument with Quinn Williams, I think, but most valuable, absolutely. I think, I agree this was Tomlinson's best game. I liked him in the run game. Pass protection, I think, maybe a couple shaky moments for sure, like a couple you mentioned. I think Herbig is doing a solid job right now. I think McGovern bounced back a little bit in this one. I think Steelers game, he was really bad
rough, right?
Against the run, or in the run game. Him and Tomlinson were just really bad in the run game, but I think they both bounced back this week. And then Dwayne Brown, I think, was okay in his first game. I think the communication with Tomlinson and just in general with the offensive line, there were some moments where I think it looked like he maybe is going to need some time with that, which you'd expect, but he did have some good run blocks, and in pass protection, he mostly held up. So overall, I think the O-line, both run and pass game was really solid. I think it was about the best you could hope for right now with everything they're dealing with the injuries. But it was a good performance, though. I mean, you score 5 rushing touchdowns, you rush for 135 or 136, whatever it was. And then in pass protection, Wilson was only pressured, I think, 20% of the dropbacks, and some of those pressures were actually on. Breece Hall gave up a sack, so some of them weren't even on the offensive line.
What is league average? You say 20%. What is league average typically?
League average is usually 35%. So if you're in the 40s, that's kind of poor, and then 50 plus is pretty bad. If you get into the 20s, then you're talking good protection. So.
Yeah. I thought Herbig was really good. And by the way, go watch a review. I put it out there. And he was solid again. AVT, great. McGovern, like I said, bounced back. He was definitely rough. Even in the broadcast I was watching, I'm like, dude, this is just brutal. Like, how many situations where they just ran the ball for 1 yard that Steelers game was why I thought they were going to lose that game, especially on the road. And Tomlinson was okay, but I'm still not I wasn't blown away for the contract they gave him even in that game. And then Brown, again, I don't know if I think he maybe gave up a sack or a hit, but past that, I thought he was, again, pretty good. And to me, I think it's another side note. This is another thing about this team is how many vets in the past would get an injury. Okay, I got my contract, I got my guaranteed money, I'm going to stay out the rest of the year. You have a guy in Brown who seems like he's supposed to get shoulder surgery, and saying like, no, fuck that. Like I want to play with this team, which is a great sign to me. And like another, like kind of like a notch in his belt, like awesome. Like makes a Brown like a much more of a fan. Like, he's not a fan favorite, but like gives me a lot of respect for him. Anything else you want to add to the offensive line before we get to the linebackers or safeties or corners and then get into the Packers game a little bit?
No, I mean, I think this is, like I said, I think with everything they're dealing with, it was about as good as you can hope for. I would say overall it was an above average to solid offensive line game overall. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would say solid. I'm comfortable with solid. And then you stack up, okay, Herbig having more time at right guard, ABT more time at right tackle, Dwayne Brown more time, Tomlinson hopefully rounding out somewhat.
Yeah.
It should just get better from there. And it speaks to like some of the depth and stuff that Joe Douglas has built, at least on the inside of it. Like Herbig coming in, that's a really good pickup to me. I have some problems with what exactly he did with the tackle position because they got lucky that Mitchell was at least okay, the first couple of weeks. But nonetheless, moving to the linebackers, Quan in this game, dude, the guy is all over the field in the run game, especially in this game. I don't think he was great versus Steelers, but this game he was very good watching it. He had that key tackle for loss on 4th and short, slipping blocks. Do you think he's the like? And this is you can't get in Ulbricht's head, but at this point, like, has he proven himself enough to be like that lock starter? Like when Quincy Williams comes back, I am so much more comfortable with Quan in the run game than I am with Quincy. Quincy has those big plays sometimes, but Quan has those big plays, but he's also much more consistent in terms of like defeating blocks. So I think he needs to be the starter even when Quincy comes back.
Yeah, I agree. And that's even with, I think Quincy was improving a little bit over last year, but Quan has been really, really solid. I think he's outperformed what I expected of him, and I think we reasonably could expect considering the contract he got. Because his consistency, I think, is what's been impressive. He's a great athlete, and kind of similar to Quincy. I think there were some tendencies in previous years for him to make a lot of plays, but also have decently high missed tackle totals. But he's locked in right now. I mean, he's shedding blocks, he's making big plays in space, he rarely misses tackle, and then just his tendency to make these big hits that just spark the defense. It's he's a huge spark plug, and the big hits are great just for highlight purposes, but the quality of some of these tackles he makes, like the one he had on Hill on that I believe it was that I'm pretty sure it was that like trick play they tried and he
reversed
all the way back around. And then Quan just like flattens them in space. Like linebackers aren't supposed to do that on Tyreek Hill, but he's doing that right now. So he had a bunch of tackles like that in this game where you expected the play to go a lot further than it did, but Quan just stops the guy right where he is. So he's playing really good football.
I don't know if it was I think it was Mostert or however you pronounce it. Like there's another player. He took his legs out and he like helicoptered like 3 yards. Like Quan's been impressive in the run game, and like you said, I think it's a good point. Like his consistency in the run game is what makes me much more comfortable with him over a guy in Quincy, who I think is improving. But I think like ideally, he's your third, maybe your sub linebacker who's not necessarily playing all the snaps. I remember not necessarily thinking Mosley played a good game this watching broadcast. Watching it after, I thought Mosley was actually pretty solid in this game. The only thing I will like knock him for is the touchdown run to Mostert. He tried to punch the ball out. I don't know if you saw the same thing, but he needs to wrap up. Like he comes in, I forget if it was his left or his right arm. You can tell it clearly cocks back. He tries to punch the ball out. He could have tackled him there at let's say it was like the 8-yard line. So that was a mistake. But I was more impressed with Mosley going back and watching it. I do think he's lost a step overall, but I still thought he was pretty solid in this game, mainly in the run game.
No, I thought the same thing. I mean, because the touchdown was the first thing I remembered watching it back, which, not a good play, one that should be made. But there were a lot more good plays watching it back than I realized the first time. So I think overall this has been a similar season to last year for Mosley, where, he's a solid starter. Definitely not the guy they paid him to be or, the all-pro player he used to be, but still a solid starter, I would say.
So we'll talk a little bit about maybe coaching a little bit, which by the way, like I think while the coaching, I wasn't as negative on the run games or the run game defense than some other people were. Like obviously the Jets kind of countered the Dolphins and played a lot of big nickel, keeping a little bit light so they can make tackles in space and kind of combat the passing game. The run game had a couple of like big chunks, but overall I didn't think it was as terrible as some people thought it was. They ripped off a few big ones that we didn't necessarily want to see, but they try to limit Hill and Waddle, and they were going to suffer a little bit in the run game, which I think happened to a certain extent, but I wasn't necessarily like going crazy about it. Safeties, Whitehead has improved the last couple of weeks. He laid quite a few shots in this game. I still want to see him wrap up more consistently because he does not like to wrap up. So I don't, again, process versus results. Results, big hit. Process not wrapping up, a little bit sketchy. Joyner was solid. I didn't notice Joyner really at all in this game, which for a safety.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. He kind of was not involved in the game, which I guess is good.
No, for safety it is. Like typically, obviously, doing a review, like if you're watching that guy, like okay, he didn't pick up this guy quick in cover 3, cover 4, cover 2, whatever. When you're watching it on a grand scale, sometimes that stuff can slip by you, especially when you're watching 3 games of all 22 really quickly. But when I don't notice a safety, it's typically a good thing. So Joyner was solid this game. Whitehead was solid, minus not wrapping up. Obviously, Will Parks came in some instances and played some big nickel, which again credit to Saleh playing the pass over the run. And overall, the Dolphins, like I didn't really have too big of problems with the run game. At the end of the day, there's coaches on the other side, there's players on the other side, and I thought McDaniel's run scheme is good. Like they really execute their blocks well, just in terms of like not necessarily the players, but like the scheme of it. I thought was very, very good. But at the end of the day, obviously you blow them out. Hill only has 40 yards. Waddle did nothing in this game. So give credit to the defense there. Is there any other things you want to add to the safety group before we get to corners?
Yeah, I agree on Whitehead. I think the last 2 games you've seen the positive side of the way he plays. He's going to go all out. He's going to torpedo himself into guys. He's not really going to wrap up, and it's going to result in a lot of missed tackles, which we saw the first few games. But it's also going to give you some big hits, and kind of like Quan in this game, I think he had a lot of really good open field finishes that kind of limited the after contact yardage versus what you expected in those situations. Yeah. So I think it was a solid game for him, but at the same time, like you said, it's just kind of the nature of how he plays. Sometimes you're going to get this, and sometimes you're going to get some missed tackles.
Yeah. So, and I think I'm going to reference your article now. The first part of it was with AVT and his numbers, right? And then I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, I could be completely wrong. I saw on Twitter, like PFF puts out that if the quarterback was to throw in higher or incompletion every play, they would have had a better or you're going to say the stat, wherever that stat was about them throwing more completions, they have a higher QBR than when they targeted Sauce. But then they give Sauce a bad grade, which I don't understand how you say both those things together. Like he's a bad grade, but the quarterback could dirt the ball and have a better QBR than going against Sauce, which again does not make sense to me. I think AVT had a bad grade. But I want you to lump that in because, again, I think people think you're just a numbers guy, which to me is bullshit because Nania puts out the film out there. He tries to learn consistently. He definitely does. He's definitely getting much better at that. And I appreciate that you both lump in film all 22 with the numbers. Just the numbers to me is complete bullshit. And you know how I feel about that. But when you can watch the film, understand what's happening, and then lump that in, that's what makes you Nania. And that's why you have 20-something thousand followers on Twitter. So you went a little bit off on the PFF guys. I think that gives you credibility for the people who think you're only a numbers guy, which again is bullshit from a strictly film guy. So talk about it a little bit about the Sauce grade, and I think it was AVT. You might have mentioned something else in there, but those are the two off the top of my head.
No, yeah, I mean, I think it was a good opportunity because Breece Hall and AVT had this huge breakout game, and I think a lot of people, a lot of Jets fans on Twitter are going back to those guys in the offseason who are, you can't trade up and draft a running back in the second round as the Jets with all the needs you have. Why didn't you draft another position? And then, with AVT last year, it was, this is a terrible trading up for a guard. So they were going after all these analytics people who had these very hot takes. And, it's fun to, do the I told you so sort of thing. But I also thought this was kind of an opportunity to use Hall and AVT's breakouts to kind of identify some of these problems with analytics because, like you said, I'm an analytics guy. I look at analytics a lot. I post them, I use them in my articles. I love analytics, but I think, as someone who loves them, I also understand their limitations. I don't necessarily just, marry the analytics. And it's like everything I do is numbers. Numbers have never lied. They measure everything. That's not the case at all. There are a lot of flaws with analytics in football, in a sport that has so many moving parts. It is so many variables, things that can't be quantified, things that we watching, can't even measure. Like, what is the play call? Who's setting the protections? There's so many moving parts in the sport. It's not like baseball where everything's quantifiable. You can measure pretty much everything that happens. Football's a lot different than that. So that's why you get PFF grades where, Breece Hall gets graded lower than Jeff Smith in a game where he has 197 yards.
Is that true? Did that happen?
Yes. I think Jeff Smith was like 12 points higher than Breece Hall in this game, which makes no sense. And it's not even like it was like a, bullshit 197-yard game where he's like getting wide open yards. Like, he was trucking over guys from the 20-yard line to the goal line. And, he's catching the ball out of the backfield. He was stiff arming guys to the line of scrimmage, getting 10 yards. But Jeff Smith was better. Okay. And I'm supposed to listen to your takes on how the Jets are supposed to draft. So, yeah, I think it was, there was a guy last year with Breece Hall who's like, you should have drafted Malik Willis in the second round. Zach Wilson was terrible last year. And so I think just these two guys playing well kind of brings light to some of the analytics people out there who kind of give analytics a bad, shine a bad light on it, because a lot of these people are just way too rigid about it. They're arrogant with the way they talk about it. They don't acknowledge that the numbers are not perfect and that film is always going to be king, and analytics is just like a complement to that helps you quantify what you see. It helps you, just get information that could help you make better decisions, but it's never going to replace the film in terms of what it tells you about what's really happening on the field and, just being able to describe what's actually happening. So I think analytics are a useful tool, but there are a lot of people such as the Breece Hall critics and the AVT critics who just are just way too attached to it and just don't acknowledge that they're not perfect. So that's what I take a lot of pride in using analytics for what they're good for and getting out of them what they, the positive things that they can bring you, but also not being overly attached and not being able to recognize the flaws that they do have, and kind of blending the film and the numbers. Because I think that's when you're at your best, when you're, primarily watching the film and just using the eye test, watching the game, rewatching plays over and over, and, gathering information that way, but then using the analytics as a way to kind of quantify that. I think that's the best way to do it. But unfortunately, there are too many people who, think trading up for a guard is stupid because guards don't matter. And the Jets overpaid, even though they gave up the value of like a late 4th round pick in that Vikings trade up. Or you can't draft a running back in the 2nd round when you're trying to support your young quarterback. And it's a 2nd round wage scale anyway, not the 1st round. So just, I think some of those people kind of, and Breece Hall and AVT proving them wrong kind of brings light to some of the problems with analytics. I think it would be a lot better and more people would welcome analytics if there were more people in the space who just looked at the game in an open-minded way and just explained analytics better and combined them with film and use them in a more proper fashion. But there are too many people who are just very arrogant about it, who don't welcome other opinions and just don't acknowledge the imperfection of them. So I think Breece Hall and AVT kind of shed some light on that. Excellent.
I don't know if you guys can hear me. Hopefully you can. Give me a chat. Give me something in the chat if you guys can hear me. Let's see. Oh, hold on. I think Connie's in here. I can see you smiling in the background. Hold on. Add to stream.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, we're on my phone now on LTE because I went to my internet and it said that our Xfinity is offline. There's a problem with the connection services. So I apologize for the 10-minute delay there, but I cannot pull up anything on my computer now, so I'm doing it strictly from my phone, which I might have to go grab a charger. But I will get to all the chat. Oh my God. So the only problem with this is I don't know if there's any way to fix it. But I cannot see any of the chats until like now. So that is unfortunate. So I had an hour and a half of chat to get to, which really, really sucks for the people who chatted, but nonetheless, I'll keep going. Nania, you were hitting on the analytics piece, and then we both shit out, and I don't know where necessarily we ended off, but
I think I
continue
wrapped
while I try
up,
to figure that out.
but I just quit because I thought it was me. So I think I was like talking to nobody. I just like finished it up. I was like, wait, am I still in here? And then I jumped out. But I think I wrapped it up.
Yeah, I'm gonna.
How much of what I said did you hear?
I heard up until I'm trying to think now. So much shit just happened in the last 10 minutes, so I'm trying to figure this out. But you're talking about. Yeah, I don't remember. I don't remember now. I was gonna ask you, about the last thing I heard was the Jeff Smith thing versus Sauce, and you kind of shut out from after that. So I don't know how much you talked about after that.
Yeah, I think it was a couple more minutes, but I mean, yeah. Just to sum it up, I mean, I think it was Breece Hall and AVT and some of their critics and AVT and it not being smart to trade up for a guard and Breece Hall not being smart to draft a running back just kind of brought attention to some of the people out there who are a little too much into the analytics and don't acknowledge its flaws and recognize that film should always be primary and analytics is more of just like a complement to that. It provides information, but it should never be considered the be all end all. And I think it's something that I acknowledge very readily, and I think if more analytics people did, it would be more welcomed by the general football community, because right now they're kind of pushed in an arrogant way to where the people who represent them kind of don't acknowledge the flaws and act like that, it's this perfect formula, whereas it's really far from that. So I think Breece Hall and AVT kind of brought light to some of those flaws.
And like the face of some of those analytics was that one guy from PFF who's like a massive douche about the whole Breece Hall thing, and he almost sounded like he wanted to cry when the Jets drafted Breece Hall about how offended he was for whatever reason. And the whole AVT thing, like how do you quantify trading up and like the picks are versus a certain value, you can't do it for a guard. It just there's a lot more to football, and like we talk about, and you mentioned it. I don't know if it was in that article or not, but like one, how many of these people really know the scheme and like what's supposed to be going on,
right?
And two, like you brought it up in terms of guys and how long it takes to grade plays and how quickly they get their grades out. Like it's not physically possible for them to get the grades out as quickly. So I don't want to hit on that as well. I'm going to do my absolute best, people, to get the chat back, because there's an hour and a half of chat I wanted to go through. That unfortunately I cannot now. So I'm going to do my best to get that back on my computer and get connected to Wi-Fi. Just want to give you a heads up. But comment on that if you can, Nania.
No, yeah. I mean, just kind of how I was looking at it is, a lot of the grades from PFF come out less than 24 hours after the game. I think some of them are within a few hours, but they don't really publish it until the next day. But either way, it's less than 24 hours. And you're talking about 22 players on the field for both teams, 70 offensive snaps, 70 defensive snaps. So 140 plays, 22 players each. So you're talking about thousands of individual plays you need to grade for each game. And even if you took like 5 seconds on each play, that would take you 50 hours or somewhere in that neighborhood. That's if you're rushing through it and just looking at, watch the play graded for everybody. And first of all, again, that's not possible with how fast they're going out. And second of all, even if you are doing it that quickly, that's not enough to truly grade a play. Like when I watch Zach Wilson and his games, or any quarterback that I've done with the Jets, and I grade their games, I'll watch a play 10, 15, 20 times before you can truly grasp everything that happened and get as much context as you can. So they are either, if they are taking that long to watch plays, then they're skipping a lot of plays and they're not actually grading everything, or they are actually zipping through it in 2-3 seconds per play. So there's a flaw in there somewhere, and that's how you get to Breece Hall getting a lower grade than Jeff Smith despite getting almost 200 yards.
Yeah. So I logged back into StreamYard. I'm using my phone as a personal hotspot, and I don't have a great connection. I can only get back into the chat until 9:30. So I saw super chats and stuff like that. I apologize to the people who ask questions and all of that. That sucks, but it is what it is, I guess, at this point. And sorry to kind of not necessarily comment on that, Nania, because I'm trying to figure this all out on the fly. But no, I agree with you. And go read the article. That was the last one I think you posted, unless there was another one, because you do like 6 articles a day, which is great because a lot of them have really great information. Like you said, like it's almost not possible for these guys to grade it as quickly as they do. But nonetheless, in terms of the corners, Sauce, obviously great games. He had a safety, he had the interception. He should be winning Rookie of the Week again. We have to even it out because Breece Hall didn't necessarily deserve it last week, so Sauce needs to get it this week. I thought the PI call was relatively soft on Sauce. The one that he got, the Reed one, was also a little bit soft to me. I thought he was very solid. I thought the ball was nearly uncatchable. He had a near interception. Okay, sorry.
Okay, you're back.
yeah, I got a call from work and I had to just literally end it because I can't talk right now because I got a lot of shit going on. But he had the near interception on the that was a different game. He had near interception in the Steelers game. Or no, that was this game, right? Where he like got beat to the sideline by Hill and nearly picked the ball off.
Yeah, it went straight through his hands and Hill caught it.
Yeah, so that was obviously a good play for Mena. He had a really good game in general. I thought he had a relatively soft PI call on him. Sauce, another really good game. Mike Carter II had a very good game. He had that near like teach tape with the pass deflection. He was in the curl to flat and was able to then match underneath of the corner out and get a pass deflection. He had that PI. I thought that was a little bit more deserved than the other ones, but nonetheless, the entire group played very well.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Sauce has just been so good every single week, and Brown's game may be a little bit down week, but like I made that Lost in the Sauce graphic before the year, and I did not anticipate I'd be adding to it almost every single game, so I'm kind of running out of space on there. But I mean, just every single week he's been showing up, and he's already gotten some pretty big tests, with Jamar Chase, and then granted the Dolphins were down a quarterback this week, but you're still facing Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, and he was up to it. So just between him and Garrett Wilson, they have just gotten maybe not to their ceilings, but close to it, a lot closer to it off the bat than I definitely anticipated. I expected more growing pains, a little bit of a slower progression towards their potential, but they have exceeded my expectations.
Yeah, for sure. Still trying to figure this out currently, but no, I definitely agree. I would say nearly the best. I can't really think of another corner duo that's equal to them in statistics. Is there what do you have? I don't know if you have like a list of anybody who's close in terms of the numbers and things like that, but they've been obviously near elite. And Sauce, like you're talking, people are comparing them to Revis, a little bit crazy, but in terms of their early returns in their career, you could stack them up. Now, is Sauce going to be Revis? I don't think there's going to be another Revis just based on how the game is played nowadays. But nonetheless, very, very impressed with that young man throughout his first 5 games of the season. And again, having Reed, who I think is the best free agent signing the Jets have at this point. And then Michael Carter II, who I don't know what the number say.
Oh, we lost Joe again. He's back. All right.
Yeah. Sorry, Michael Carter II has also been very, very good this year as well. So anything to add to these guys while I still try to figure out this whole situation?
No, I mean, Reed, like you said, I think he's the best free agent signing so far. I think he's played up to what I expected from him because, I mean, he was very good with the Seahawks last year, and he's kind of matched and even exceeded that production from last year. Then Michael Carter II's been very, very solid in the slot. I think, his on-ball play has been good this year. He had the breakup in this game, the interception last game, which was off a sauce tip, is still a great play. But he's been solid. So I mean, yeah, this is definitely one of the best cornerback. Just looking at the duo on the outside, one of the best in the league. Definitely as an argument for the best this year. I mean, Philly's duo has been pretty good with Bradbury and Slay, and Denver's duo has been good with Surtain and forget who they have next to him, but Surtain's had an amazing season, and I think it's Ronald Darby they have, but either way,
It is Darby.
Is it Darby? I'd have to look at it again, but either way, it's one of the best cornerback duos in the league, and it's just not exaggerating when you look at the production that they're putting up every single week, the yards that they're limiting, the plays they're making on the ball. It's been very good to watch. And like you mentioned earlier, if the pass rush can play the way it played in this game on a more consistent basis, and we know they have the potential to do that, and you couple that with the cornerback play, and the ceiling for the defense is just very high because those are the two premium positions that you want to be good at. Can you create a pass rush without blitzing? And can you cover some of these many talented receivers in the league today? And if those two things can work off of each other, you can be a very productive defense, even with some of the holes they have at other positions. So it's exciting to think about how good this team could be, whether it's this year or in the future, when they start to put everything together, because it still doesn't feel like they've totally put everything together yet for an entire game. But you've seen improvement all across the board at different positions. And, once it all starts clicking, it can be really something special.
Yeah. Okay. So let's move to I guess I'll comment on special teams really quickly. Get to the Packers. We're going to expedite the Packers a little bit. I'm going to try to do my absolute best impromptu fixing this while Nania leaves. I'm going to try to do it because I owe you guys the chat again. I saw super chats stuff in there. It's really frustrating that this has happened, but nonetheless, Xfinity is on my shit list now. But with that being said, Nania, do we owe Braden Mann and Zerline an apology? Because Zerline hasn't missed a kick since week 1. Braden Mann pinned 1 inside the 10, maybe 1 inside the 5, or at least two inside the 10. So they've both been very good. So what did the numbers say about them? Obviously, no really impressive kicks for Zerline this week, but in general, they've both been very solid since that week 1 performance where they both kind of shit the bed.
No, yeah. I mean, it was a really shaky start to the season, to say the least. But ever since then, they've been about as good of a punter-kicker duo as you can kind of ask for. I mean, Braden Mann is 9th in net yardage per punt since after week 1. And that might even undersell him a little bit because he's had some nice pin punts where, the yardage is kind of limited, but, you pin him inside the 5. That's the best you can do. He set up the safety on the first play by Miami. So he's been good. And then Zerline, has been flawless ever since that first game. So and then even the rest of the special teams has starting to put it together. I mean, Barrios in this game had the big return off the safety. I think he had another solid return in addition to that. So he's starting to get it going. And then the return coverage has been good too. There's pretty much nothing to speak of in terms of the Jets struggling to cover kicks. So Brant Boyer is showing you why he has lasted with this team for so long, because the Jets special teams is starting to get, if they can continue what they're doing right now, they're starting to get on that Ravens and Patriots kind of level where it's just a consistent plus with the special teams, which is something we haven't appreciated much over the past few years because they haven't played enough games where it matters or you really care about it that much. But as they start to play these close games and, the other team misses a kick and you don't, and that's when the value starts to pop up. So as they play all these close games, I think that special teams value is going to be very appreciated.
Yeah, no, for sure. Now, and I actually picked up Greg the Leg in one of my fantasy leagues, and he's been decent. So, but who really cares about my fantasy league? But With that, I was going to pull up the Our Lads depth chart for the Packers game, Nania. Unfortunately, I could not, so I'm going to just pretty much just throw this entire topic to you. Obviously, I know some of the Packers. I don't remember all of them.
I could pull it up and share it if you want me to do that.
Oh, okay, perfect. Yeah. So
Yeah.
in terms of Rodgers, we can start with that while you obviously pull it up. I'll kind of just talk about the Packers in at least recent weeks. A team who is believed to at least be one of the top contenders in the NFC struggle against the Giants. Obviously, they lost that game. I didn't watch necessarily, but I think the Giants are a little bit of a fabricated kind of 4-1. And they obviously struggled with Bailey or with Zappy too, the Patriots the week prior. So, are the Packers as good as we all think? Now, I think they're still really, really good at home, and they have been really, really good at home in the recent past. But that's also the Packers of old. Are they Packers of 2022, the 2021, 2020, 2019 Packers, or what are we looking at like overall with this team? Do you think?
Yeah, I mean, really, this 2-game road trip here definitely doesn't look as intimidating as it did prior to the year. And that's not to say the Jets are at the point yet where they should be expected to win any game. But the Packers don't look as much of a juggernaut as they have been in recent years, and as you expect them to be. I mean, this is a team that the last couple of years won 13 games the last 3 seasons, and now they're already halfway to the loss total that they usually have. So. They're only +1 in the point differential. Aaron Rodgers has not been as sharp as he typically is. We know that receiving group they have is not anything special, to say the least. So it's not the same Packers, at least offensively. I think defensively they have some good stuff going on. Although last couple of weeks, not as sharp against quarterbacks you would like for them to be more dominant against. But it's still a good team, but definitely not the Packers juggernaut of the past few years.
Yeah. Now you said their offensive line is I don't know if you could share the screen. I can't see it right now.
Can you see that? I think you have to put it up.
Yeah, it's I don't know if I could do it from my phone. That's the only problem. Yeah, I might not be able to pull it up, this is just, of course, my first show back and the internet shuts out. It's just the luck I have. But if you could read off the offensive line, and you did talk about them being an overall strength for the Packers. So tell us a little bit about the offensive line for the Packers.
Yeah, so left tackle to right tackle, it's listed as David Bakhtiari, John Runyon, Josh Myers, Royce Newman, and Elgton Jenkins. And I'll be honest, I don't know a ton about the interior trio, but I do know that tackle duo is probably one of the best. I know Elgton Jenkins is a versatile guy who's kind of similar to that AVT mold. I know he's played multiple positions very well for them. And then Bakhtiari, when healthy, has been very good for a long time. And then, they're consistently one of the better rushing teams. They are running the ball decently this year. They're 10th in yards per carry. The pass protection for Rodgers has been pretty good. So I think it's a solid offensive line, and it will be a better test than Miami was last week. So I think we should get a good read on whether this defensive line can continue doing what it did this week.
Now, are their running backs as big of a concern as everybody thinks are with Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon? Obviously, they're considered one of the top probably 5 duos in the league. So do you think if the Jets are able to shut down this run game, it gives them a very big opportunity to win this game?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of similar to, Cleveland and what they have with Chubb and Kareem Hunt. Definitely not on that caliber, I don't think, because I think that's probably the number 1 duo. Yeah. But it's still a good balanced 1-2 punch. They have pretty much the same number of carries this year. So, A.J. Dillon brings a little more size. Aaron Jones more on the speed side. But we'll see how they do with it, because the run defense has been unexpectedly solid. Like you said, I think, last week's run defense against Miami is kind of more scheme, more so than talent. And then you're playing, Packers offense that kind of comes from a similar coaching tree as, where the Dolphins do with Mike McDaniel. So we'll see if they can keep it up. But I think we've seen some flashes of good run defense. The Bengals game, the Ravens game especially, and the Steelers game. I think you saw solid run defense. So we'll see if they can keep that up this week.
Now, listen, their receiver group isn't necessarily something to write home about. You have Watson, you have Lazard, you have Christian Watson, you have Randall Cobb, Sammy Watkins, and then even the tight ends are what you have Tunyon and is it still Mercedes Lewis, who is like has to be 85 years old at this point.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
what about their skill position groups? Is there any like hidden gems here which we should be concerned of, or do you think with Sauce and Reed and even MC2 that we should be able to lock these guys down?
Yeah, I mean, Romeo Doubs, the 4th-round pick, he's kind of become a little more involved in the offense the last 3 weeks. But overall, you're not going to find and this is, again, not to say from a Jets perspective that they should look down on anybody or be expected to do anything because they still have to prove it. But you're not going to find a receiving group that's less intimidating, less proven than this group is. And that's not to say that with Aaron Rodgers and a solid offensive line that anybody can't make plays there, but it's just not the same Packers, passing attack. They're 20th in passing yards right now. Aaron Rodgers has a passer rating below 100, which is unusual for him when he's well above that most seasons. So it's just not as dynamic as usual. And I think we've already seen Sauce and Reed be up for Jamar Chase, up for Hill and Waddle, Pickens and Claypool, and even some of those. Deontay Johnson, I'd even say, is probably better than this group. So this is the type of unit I would definitely expect a lot from Sauce and Reed in terms of not even necessarily making interceptions and things like that, but just handling their business, winning the one-on-ones, and not giving Rodgers options.
Yeah, it might legitimately be the worst receiving group in the entire NFL. But like you said, you have Aaron Rodgers, he's going to make some plays. And you have one of the better running back duos in the league. I think if you could stop that run game, regardless of how good Rodgers is, I think you can create some turnovers or at least limit their passing game enough to limit the offense, giving the Jets a chance to win. I'm more concerned with the defense, though, over the offense, even though they do have Rodgers. Defensive line, again, it's tough off the top of my head because, of course, my internet shut out. But you got guys like Kenny Clark there. You have Rashawn Gary. You have Preston Smith. So the defensive front is at least strong on paper. Do the numbers kind of match the pressures and the run stops and all those specific numbers? The defensive line is either putting up or not putting up?
Oh, yeah, it's definitely it's a formidable D-line for sure. I mean, a couple of the guys you mentioned, Kenny Clark is right up there, I think, in that Quinnen Williams kind of tier. For interior D linemen, Rashawn Gary has developed into a top-tier edge rusher, and they also still have Preston Smith, who's a nice complementary edge rusher. So between those three guys, it's a very solid big three to lead that pass rush. So it's going to be a challenge for this O-line, I think, more so than the Dolphins, and definitely more so than the Steelers without T.J. Watt. Better than the Bengals, I would say. Probably the toughest they faced since the Browns. And, they granted did a pretty decent job considering the circumstances in that Browns game. That was with Max Mitchell in there and George Fant. So different unit this week, but that's a very good pass rush. And I think that is probably the greatest challenge, other than Rodgers, obviously, probably the greatest challenge that the Packers will present for the Jets this week.
Okay, now moving to the linebackers, who, off the top of my head, they have Campbell and is it Quay Walker? Are they performing? Because Campbell was a guy who, before last year, he was kind of like a scrap heap linebacker pickup for the Packers. He wasn't expected to be a Pro Bowl level guy, but he obviously produced really well with the Packers last year. Now, did he follow that up this year based on what you're looking at, and how has Quay Walker been producing, if you have any numbers on him?
No, based on what I've seen, it seems like Campbell's still playing pretty well. Obviously, last year he had an out-of-nowhere All-Pro Bowl year. He was, a decent starting linebacker, but then goes to the Packers, and he's a superstar. And seems like he's still playing pretty well, especially in coverage. He was known to be pretty good last year and is doing that again. Then you have Quay Walker, the first-round rookie, who seems like he's had a nice start to the season. So linebacker duo is also pretty good for the Packers. And, just going week by week, I feel like looking at other teams' depth charts and just around the league, there aren't a lot of teams where you look at their linebackers as a strength. I feel like it's a weird time for linebackers in the league. A lot of teams are not really that strong there, but this is one team where you can look at it and kind of see it as a potential strength. So really the whole front seven here, both the D-line and the pass rush, along with the linebackers, I think should be a good challenge for this offensive line on the road.
Okay, now moving to the corner group or the secondary. We're looking at Jory Alexander. We're looking at Eric Stokes. I forget who is their slot off the top of my head. Then you have, is it still Savage and Amos at safety for the Packers?
Yep.
So it's a relatively strong secondary as well. So the defense is pretty stacked up.
Yeah, it's a pretty stacked defense. It definitely is. And granted, the secondary I would say is probably underperformed a little more than the pass rush has, because the pressures have still been there at the sacks from those top guys. But pass defense, not quite what you expect. Right now, they're 22nd, or they are 12th actually in net yards per pass attempt allowed, which is still pretty good. But granted, some of the quarterbacks they face, they face Justin Fields, they face Bailey Zappi, they face Daniel Jones. You would like to be higher than that with the pass rush they have and the secondary talent they have. So it's not quite been as great as they were in previous years and, have the talent to be. And right now they're giving up a passer rating over 100 this season, 100.2. That's 24th in the league. And again, considering the quarterbacks they faced, not ideal, I think, considering the talent they have. So pass rush, definitely very intimidating. Secondary on paper is absolutely very good, but to this point has underperformed a little bit. So we'll see maybe if this home game against the Jets is a chance for them to get right a little bit. But then from the Jets side, you look at it and think, if some of those other quarterbacks can put up those numbers against them, why can't we do that?
Yeah, exactly. If you have like Daniel Jones and Zappi and some of these teams winning these games against, or at least competing with the Packers. I know the Pats didn't win, but why can't the Jets with all the talent that they have? And obviously going to Lambeau and winning that game, or even really competing in that game till the fourth quarter, or hopefully deep into the fourth quarter again, or if not, just straight up winning, would be a huge message to the league. Like if you beat the Dolphins, regardless of the situation, you beat the Steelers in a comeback, you go into Lambeau, you beat the Packers. Like we are going, like you said earlier in the broadcast, which I lost all the chats from, which is just absolutely brutal. We are going to be unstoppable at that point. It's going to be ridiculous to stream next week. So give me your, if you want to, just give me like overall thoughts in terms of how it's going to shake out. I don't know if you want to give a score prediction. I know you might wait to do that, but in general, your feelings on this game. I'll let you go, and I'm going to do my best to get the chat back and do an impromptu from my phone live stream for at least another half an hour or so. So
yeah, no, I mean, I'm really looking forward to this, and it's cool to get this kind of statement game after what already was a statement game, but it's a chance to really follow it up with to one up that game and have another just kind of badge to add to your resume to continue proving to people why you should be taken seriously. If you can go on the road and beat Aaron Rodgers, regardless of the Packers' decline and who they lost to or not beaten that badly this year, it's hard to win in Lambeau regardless. So for him, and especially for Zach Wilson, he already won in Pittsburgh, again, regardless of the talent of the Steelers relative to other Steeler teams. So to then go into Lambeau and win would just be a big statement. And, the main storyline of this game is obviously going to be Wilson versus Rodgers, maybe similar play styles. Rodgers is his favorite quarterback and all that. I really think the game is going to be a lot about that, even in addition to just it being the storyline. I really think it will come down to that because, like I said, I think this Packers pass rush is the best thing they have going for them right now outside of the quarterback. And against this Jets offensive line, which granted it played pretty well, I would say they played great. I think they played a really good game against the Dolphins. So they're coming off a good game, but I think this is a different level, and you're going on the road. I think there's a good chance it'll be a challenge for Wilson in this game. He's going to have to deal with some pressure. It's going to be more like the Steelers game where he's going to have to put the team on his back a little bit. And I think it is going to come down to can he go shot for shot with Aaron Rodgers at Lambeau Field. So I think this is going to be a good measuring stick game for him.
Can you imagine the confidence that would instill, and just not even just him, like the team, like if they are able to go shot for shot with the Packers in Lambeau, and even if they can pull out that game. So do you feel again, you don't have to give a score if you don't want to, but do you feel the Jets are going to win this game? Like, what is your final prediction, at least, that you can give at this point on a Wednesday?
So at this point now, I predicted wins ahead of the first two games. Then I predicted losses each of the next three. Even last week, I just still didn't have the confidence to go with it. Am I going to finally change that this week? I feel like I shouldn't. Yeah, you're right. I almost feel like they've kind of earned it. But at this point, I'm going to go with the Packers. But I think it will be a close, high-scoring game where you really feel good about Zach Wilson, but kind of the defense falls back to earth a little bit. I'll say 31-27 Green Bay.
A little bit of a shootout in Lambeau. All right, I'll take it. Nania, I appreciate you being here. I'm sorry for the last half an hour or so. But nonetheless, I'm going to hit the chat and try to clean up this shit show as best I can the next little bit. So I appreciate having you on.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. Great to have you back. I know everyone else appreciates it too, and hopefully, your presence is not a curse for the Jets' success. And what you missed is a sign of things to come, and not a result of you not being here.
It's going to be. Obviously, I come back and the first stream, this happens. So it's not
already
a good
off on the wrong foot.
But we'll see. We'll see. And I appreciate you, Nadia. I'll talk to you, I'm sure, tomorrow. So appreciate you having you on, and I'll see you then. But I'm gonna get to the chat now. And for the chat, I'm going to be doing some weird stuff because hold on. I don't know if you can still hear me. Hopefully you can. I'm gonna check my internet diagnostic real quick on Xfinity, and hopefully it's not just me. Well, it's not just me because they're saying they're offline as well. Yeah, we're experiencing an. I don't know if you guys can still hear me. We're experiencing an outage. Hold on. Can you guys see me? Okay, I think you can. So Xfinity is experiencing an outage, so it's not just me. So I did all I could to get Google Home and all this stuff and Google Nest. And if the internet shuts out for the entire area, the internet shuts out for the entire area. So it is beyond frustrating to me that I lost an hour and a half of chats. And I'm sure you guys had a bunch of good comments about freaking Italy and all the games and all the shit I wanted to answer. So I am quite pissed off right now that I cannot do that. I don't know how I'm going to make that up to you guys, but it is what it is right at this point. So I don't know exactly when these chats are from because I can't see it on the phone version of this, but I'm going to go through at least a few chats here. If you want to drop anything that you wanted me to answer in the first half or anything about Italy or whatever, that's awesome. I think I can't even pull it up now, but let me pull up the lot. Hold on. Give me a second, guys. Okay. All right. An absolute shit show of an ending of a show. I apologize. I'm doing my absolute best. But I want to take the lot for you guys. So if you guys are going to be in the Green Bay game, lot 9, Tailgate Joe is going to be having a tailgate there from 8 to 10, I believe it is. And it's free beer, free like burgers or hot dogs, something like that. So I will be there, lot 9, Tailgate Joe. If one of the 133 people, the fact that we have almost 140 people in here after what's happened the last half an hour, I really appreciate it. Again, drop anything in the chat that that you want to talk about because I lost an hour and a half of it, which is fucking annoying. But let's run through some of this and what you guys are saying. What price do you pay a man who plays excellent in all offensive line positions except center, even though he probably could? We won a swing tackle and got Superman. Yeah, well, the good thing is we don't have to worry about that for at least another 2 seasons at the minimum. So it's going to be a lot of money, though. That is for sure. But his versatility, you're going to pay a price for. That is for sure. Adam S. Becton will be back next year. True, but I'm not relying on Becton in any form or fashion. Like, I'm not relying on him being a starting tackle. Becton at this point is a backup. So, hey, Joe, Pro Bowl is bullshit. So is Rookie of the Week. So shush, could we fucking love Rookie of the Week? No, I agree. It is just nice to see the guys that can practice, like get their belt and all that. But the Pro Bowl is bullshit because, again, like, does Tomlinson really deserve it last year based on his film? No. So it is kind of like a fan vote, where at least like Rookie of the Week has a little bit of like stats to it, and things like that. So again, I'm gonna keep checking my internet and stuff to see if I can get back on my computer, but I don't think it's gonna happen. So that is awesome. Let's keep moving on just through stuff that stands out. Why stop there with ABT? I bet he could pass too. I think Salah made comments about him playing quarterback, obviously in a joking fashion, but yeah, I think while Quinnen's been the better player at any position, like I think he's a better D tackle than ABT has been at tackle or guard. The versatility that ABT has been has shown obviously throughout this year it makes him the most valuable player right now. Obviously, discounting quarterback and Zach Wilson being a good quarterback, that's gonna be the most important. But minus quarterback, ABT's been the MVP. So let's keep moving on. They wouldn't cut him, but probably not take a 5th-year option if they're keeping Mims this year. They're keeping Beck. I don't necessarily see how Becton and Mims relate. Becton has, if they're keeping Mims this year, they're keeping Mackay. Can you trade Mims for a 5th and not trade Becton for a 5th? I don't necessarily see them relating to one another, Brian. But let's see. When the Jets need to decide on Becton's 5th-year option, could be wrong, but it's sometime in like May or June, I believe it is. So it's sometime during his 4th year, right before his 4th year. I could be wrong, but I think that's what it is. What do you think Fant's trade value would be if we looked into that? You're only getting a year on the contract, and you're getting the rest of the year. If you're looking at a team who's like desperate for tackle, maybe like a 5th-round pick for the rest of the year. Maybe I could see Joe Douglas finessing somebody into like a 4th. But I would say a 4th or a 5th if I had to guess off the top of my head. Chrono Kenny, I'm still so pissed off I lost all those shots. I really, really am. I'm probably gonna go back and watch on YouTube and just like see what you guys are saying at least, just because like I legitimately want to talk to the people who were probably in here at first and not here anymore. So it's like 3 hours later, but nonetheless, let's see. I don't see Fan as long-term answer anymore. We're gonna draft a tackle next year and bring in quality depth tackle in case Brown goes down. Yeah, I if I had to bet right now, I would say beginning of the year, I would say Fan would be on this team in 2023 and on. But now with this recently with his injury problems kind of rearing its ugly head, with Mitchell stepping up, with Brown being locked into the Jets next year, I'm not saying he's not necessarily locked in, but his contract makes it that I really doubt the Jets would get rid of him. Having Becton as a backup, I don't think that your tackles next year are all of Mitchell, Fant, Brown, and Becton. So I think Fant is the odd guy out, and they draft a guy or they sign a guy, and then maybe both Becton and Brown are high price backups. But even at that point, I think I'd look to get rid of Becton, clear some cap space from it, or clear some cap space with trading him and get a draft pick back. I don't think you want Dwayne Brown making like $11 million next year as a backup, and Becton making a good chunk of change as tackle 3 and 4. It's not necessarily the best allocation of resources. So we kind of just talked about this. Rich, by the way, hello, Rich. You probably chatted earlier. Again, I'm pissed that I missed it. Nonetheless, yeah, I don't know if there's a better trio than them in the league right now. Need Huff to see 45% and up. I'm fine with. I don't know what Nania said the numbers were exactly, but you're going to see 25 to 35% just because a lot of passing down situations, because Huff is not necessarily the best run defender. So you're going to see him only in obvious, 3rd and 6, or maybe even like 3rd and 5, 3rd and 6, or like 2nd and long. You're going to see him in the game. You're not really going to see him on run downs, first down. because he's not necessarily the strongest against the run. So let's see. Okay, devil's advocate. What if the whole fewer snaps thing is about longevity and quality for a full season? What if this is like the NFL equivalent of Moneyball? I don't really think there's not many examples of guys playing 60% of the snaps and being more productive. Like I think Nani actually did an article about it recently where Quinn's numbers actually go up the more snaps he's played in past seasons. So about longevity, I don't think you'd necessarily be afraid of injuries. I get the point there, but I don't necessarily agree with it. Ball through hoop. Yeah, let's see. Dom C. Joe Lawson has showed up the last 2 games, no doubt, but is he carrying he is carrying $15.5 million cap hit next season feasible? I think if he keeps producing the way he did last week, or not necessarily to exactly that extent, because last week was near elite, but near that level, I think it is feasible. Because you're talking about one of the better edge rushers in the league in terms of pressures and QB hits, Dom C. Which you can't predict he's going to finish the season out like he played this game, because that would make it one of the most elite defensive line rushing seasons we've ever seen. And obviously he's not going to play Brandon Shell every week at left tackle, but I think if he keeps producing relative to like what our expectations are, like after this week, then he will deserve that money. But it is a lot though. But especially if we're going to consider that, okay, he's only going to play 60% of the snaps. So obviously this week it was like 72. But if he's only going to play 60% of the snaps, we're talking about $15.5 million, maybe not. So do you think the defense is slowly figuring things out from Dylan, figuring things out and actually game planning for opponents rather than sticking to one specific blueprint, game in and game out like that? Yeah, I think last year too, and I think Salah kind of not referenced it, but he kind of like hinted towards that they want to take their lumps to really install their scheme last year, and they want to stay simple. Where I think this year they're going to be a little bit more complex with traps and things like that, because you've had the defensive system implemented for a year now. But with that being said, you still have a lot of young guys and new guys to the system, so I think over time they will get more complex. So I don't know if that answers it. Again, this is weird doing on my phone. I do not like it at all. Let's see. RJ MacPot. I hope I didn't miss any of those super chats. I think I definitely did, but I appreciate the $2 super chat. Do you think we stunt enough? I would have to pull up numbers in terms of how much we stunt. And again, it's really hard to quantify the last 3 weeks of shotgunning the reviews and how much we stunt versus the league average. I think stunting is more for defensive lines who definitely can't create pressure in one-on-ones. In some situations, it's good, but it also can take the guy longer to get to the quarterback if you are going to loop. So I don't think it's a thing. It's not necessarily a thing I think about where I'm like watching these games where they're not stunting enough. Again, if you're having defensive linemen who aren't necessarily the best at winning one-on-ones, sure. But again, it could take a longer time to get there. So I think JFM, Lawson, and those guys can win without stunts. I think it's absolutely necessary. Illuminati got a picture of you on TV opening day in the crowd. Yeah, I got that picture from a couple of people. I think a couple of people sent me on Twitter, and like 2 of my buddies texted today, which, by the way, I don't know how people noticed like that, because I was looking down and I'm eating chicken, which is not the best picture of me of that. But yeah, that's great. I got sent that at least a couple of times. It's funny. Another person, Twisted, I'm loving this. I am hating this, Twisted. I lost an hour. I was so excited to talk to everybody. And I was like at like 8:14 to chat. I had almost 2 hours of stuff to see. At least sift through there had to be plenty of good chats in there, and I freaking missed it all. So I'm very frustrated right now, but it is what it is. What a turn from hearing he's a bust being the 3rd overall pick, just to show it takes a team to play this game. Yeah, I don't think he was necessarily a bust. I don't think a lot of people talk about Quentin Williams as a bust. I think it's more he was disappointed for it relative to his pick, which last year he was. But this year, obviously, he's one of the better D tackles in the league. So I think for him to be worth a pick, he has to be at the minimum of top 10, hopefully top 5 interior defensive lineman in the league. And this year he's playing top 5 interior defensive lineman in the league. So Dylan, make sure we blitz Rodgers on Sunday like the Giants did to get him off his rhythm. I think it's something that you want to mix in there. I don't think you necessarily want to just keep rushing 4 at him, at least consistently, because he's a guy who's smart and will adjust to that. And if the rush doesn't get there, he will pick you apart, especially with the offensive line that's pretty solid. You're going to want to throw some extra rushers, throw some cat blitzes, get Sauce in there, get MC2 into there. Because while the Jets did produce at a very high level with the defensive line last week, the Dolphins are not a good offensive line, especially considering they lost Armstead. So the Packers are better. So I think you're going to have to mix it in. And with that being said, I think you can also take advantage of the fact that the Packers don't have the most threatened, not even the most. Their offensive skill players minus the running backs are pretty poor. So you could blitz a little bit more than you would necessarily on an average game because Sauce and Reed and MC2 can lock these guys down. So I think you should, at least a little bit. I'm not going to say do it a ton because he will pick you apart either way. And blitzing, really good quarterbacks will take advantage of that. They'll find the hot and they'll win those reps. So they still haven't used Berrios like last year. That was also a problem. They used Berrios a lot last year because they were running guys out like Tyreek Black and Jeff Smith at the end of the year. So that's why you saw his usage go up. I'd much rather have Garrett Wilson, Elijah Moore, Corey Davis, Breece Hall, Michael Carter see the ball over Berrios. Even though I like Berrios, but like Brian Newell said, too many mouths to feed. If that was in a response to Matt, Jets not running any screens. It's fine. This is Joe. Welcome back. Thank you, Joshua. Again, I'm sorry for losing your chats, Joe. Yep. If Tomlinson is slightly above average and stays healthy all year, he's worth every penny. Yeah, $15 million, $14 million is a lot for an average, slightly above average guard. But I think, again, a part of it is knowing the system and the consistency in terms of him not being injured. So while I would slightly disagree, I think we're talking about one of the better guards in the league for that contract. I'm not going to lose my shit if he's just slightly above average. So most of the Jets getting 7 points against Green Bay, it's a big part of it's how they play at Lambeau. And especially considering Rodgers off of a loss, they're going to be pissed, and they're playing it, back at home where they've been very, very good. And obviously, there's still plenty of doubt with the Jets. You're going to look at the Jets. No, they beat the Steelers with Kenny Pickett. They beat the Dolphins with their third string, without really watching the games and realizing how impressive they've been. So, look, myself getting to the chat soon, guys. Fucking liar. Timed out. Yeah, sorry, guys. Create a new service over PF. Oh, dude, we're talking. They have probably thousands of workers. Like, this has already been a lot with JetX. Like, we have like 30 writers. We will create something better. For the Jets, I think it is. You have Nania's numbers. You have the film. So for just the Jets, it's better than PFF. I don't think I'm going crazy to say that. I don't think crazy to say that. Maybe we expand. Maybe not. Come on. Ryan, what's something happening to Ryan stream? So usually it's like my computer, but my computer, I've done everything I possibly can to make my internet connection good, which once I got the Google Nest, it's been a lot better. But literally the Xfinity is down in my entire area, which I'm curious. I don't know if Mike has. I know Mike is one of the listeners and he has Xfinity. Or no, he lives in the area. I wonder if his is down too. But yeah, I'm sorry about that, guys. Show you back. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Okay, let's keep going through the chat. And of course, right now my phone is on 12% too, so I might need to. I have to run through the chat pretty quickly because now my wife's sleeping too. Joe is going to be on until 1 a.m. with all the catching up he had. You're 100% right, and I was looking forward to it. Even though I have to wake up I have to leave my house like 9 o'clock and catch the plane to go to Chicago. But yeah, I was looking forward to it. Yes. Would you call Sauce a potential generational talent at this point? For how he's produced so far in his early career, how do you quantify generational? Because once in a generation, I not because like it all depends on how you quantify generational, Hawk. Because generational to me means one in a generation. You had, or nearly once in a generation, but you had Surtain last year who also did very, very, very well. So I think you're looking at a guy who we're almost at this point expecting him to be a top 10 corner, but in terms of generational, I can't say that because I don't really. When's the last true generational talent? Like J.J. Watt, Aaron Donald have been like the last like generational guys I can think about. There's probably some I'm missing, but I can't say generational at this point. Now, could he be? Sure, but then you're talking about the best corner in the league for like many, many, many years. That would be generational to me. Welcome back. Yes, sorry. I'm still so freaking mad. Buffalo Jets fan? Oh, I didn't see that, but appreciate you being in here, throwing a super chat. Beer fun for the tailgate. Enjoy the game. Luckily, the tailgate is actually free for tailgate show, but again, lot 9. I hope to see some of you guys there. I know some people have already reached out and like confirmed that they're going to be there as well, and I'll see them there. So I appreciate that. This is the beer fun for after the free tailgate. So I got to figure out something to do from 10 to 12, which I might actually go into the stadium. Apparently, there's a brewery in Green Bay, in Lambeau, so I might hit that from 10 to 12, but we'll see. Let's see. Communication breakdowns in the Packers defense. Great. Hope we can take advantage of it. Again, Kurt Warner's film breakdown sucked, to be honest. So somebody sent me them, sent me one of them, and I watched like the first 10 minutes. I think he obviously knows what he's talking about, but like he mentioned Zach Wilson missing a pass, but he never mentioned the footwork and why he missed the pass. So I don't think they're as good as they could be, to be honest. So I actually got sent that. I forget who sent it to me, but I apologize. I wonder if Blue came back with a go to it. Yeah. Let's see. Which, by the way, Joe, if you want to use your computer to set up, you can use a hot. Yeah. So the only problem with the hotspot for my phone is right now I have 2 out of 5 bars. So, and I actually got into I used my phone as a hotspot, got back into the chat, and I saw like I can only go back into like 9:30 in the chat anyway, so I lost it. So brutal. Got a 6-hour flight tomorrow. This is going to be sensational content, minus the last hour or 45 minutes. I appreciate that. Let's see. Okay. Seems like Quinn Williams on the Leonard Williams trajectory a bit better. No, he's this last stretch, a couple of games, Quinn Williams or Leonard Williams never had a stretch like that, at least in my opinion. And even in year 2 of Quinn Williams, I never saw Leonard Williams be that dominant. Year 3 was where we were starting to worry, but I'm getting much more confident in him being, again, one of the better defensive linemen in the league. So, what do you think of RG? I don't know what that's supposed to mean. Do you believe the run D has improved? I still don't see it and concur and concerned with Mosley. It is a disaster. Last week I was impressed in terms of like how much they got the ball to Tyreek Hill, and how well they, Quan Alexander, Mosley slip blocks, how decisive Whitehead was in shooting blocks or shooting gaps, not blocks. And then even like I said, like I put up a couple plays on Twitter, Rankins and Q have been responding much, much better to traps and whams where they struggled a lot with it last year. This year they're recognizing it a lot quicker. So the run defense has improved. I don't think it's going to be necessarily a strength ever, but we were talking about last year them being like one of the worst in the league, if not the worst in the league. Where this year I think they can be slightly below average to average. So I think that's fine. Yeah, YouTube chat doesn't show up until a few hours after the videos. Yeah, I know. I apologize. It's brutal. What do you think of the? You're talking about Nate Herbig. Herbig's been solid. And I did a review of him, and I thought he could be. I thought he was one of the better backup guards in the league, and that's kind of come to fruition where he's come in the right guard, and obviously AVT swung around a little bit, but it solidified the interior of the offensive line a little bit with the combinations they've been using. So I think he's good. Do I necessarily want to go with him as a locked-in starter next year? I don't. I think he's very, very good depth. But you're talking about a guy who's probably a below average starter at this point. Now, that's not to say he can't improve. He's still a young player, but I'm not going to say I want him locked in for the Jets. Yeah, see, like I missed. I saw Kev. I saw you ask something about. I saw you asked about the Mets before, and again, these are questions I know I missed. Mr. Take on the Mets or Yankees. I'm a Mets fan. Unfortunately, I'm not necessarily mad about them against the Padres in that series. Like anything can happen in 3 games. I'm mad that in September they choked away a bunch of series and lost a bunch of games to teams they shouldn't be losing to. Like you can't lose series like the Cubs in September when you have a close divisional or a race against the Braves. So pissed off about the Mets, but it is what it is. Luckily, I'm a pretty casual baseball fan, so I'm not going to ever lose my shit about it. Not like I would if it was like the Jets. But nonetheless, I don't know. Let's see if I can fix it. Let's see if I can get through. Or somehow load the Wi-Fi. That's the only chats I see. Sorry, yeah. Let's see. Do you have anything else? I'm gonna have to make it up to you guys in some way. There had to be a bunch of good chats. Playoffs, I think it's a real possibility for sure. For the Jets. Listen, at the end of the day, I'm expecting the Jets to take one or two of these next 3 games. I really am. I think there's a real shot they beat the Packers, and if they don't beat the Packers, I think they should beat the Broncos. And past that, you're talking about the Pats at home. I think they should win that game. So one of the next 2, and then beat the Pats. You're going to the bye week at 5-4 with teams like the Vikings, who aren't as good as some people thought they were. I always thought they're a little bit overhyped this year. Talking about the Jags, the Lions, there's no reason the Jets can't win, 4 or 5 games after the bye. So you're going into the bye at 5-4. You win another 4 or 5 games. You're talking about 9-10 wins. They should be fighting for a playoff spot. So I think it's a very real possibility. We need more athleticism at linebacker still. We were suffering getting the edges on a lot of plays. I don't necessarily think it's athleticism because, Quan is athletic. Quincy's athletic. Mosley is not necessarily the best athlete, but he's still not like terrible. I think it's more about like diagnosing diagnosing and awareness more than it is necessarily about athleticism. Like athleticism's obviously key, but look at guys like Dante Hightower throughout his career. He was never an athletic guy, but he's still a very good linebacker. Was always a good linebacker. So I think we need better linebackers. JFM inside with Quinn Williams and JJ and Carl Lawson on the edges seems like the best run defensive lineup. The best defensive, yeah, I would probably say that as well. Yeah, I think I agree with you, Taiwano. I'm trying to think if I could fit anybody else in there there's really not much. I think JFM is a better run defender outside than inside. But with that being said, I'd rather stick him inside to get JJ and Carl to the outside, because past that on the outside, maybe you could argue for Michael Clemens. But yeah, I think I agree with you. Any linebackers to take a shot on? Not off the top of my head. Again, I don't have freaking connection to anything, so I can't look anything up. But not right now. I think they stay put. But I think next year safety, linebacker are going to be pretty big priorities. Which player has surprised you on all 3 sides of the ball? All 3 sides of the ball. There's 3. I would say I think ABT is chalk, because you could not expect what he's doing at this point. But I would say I'd say ABT is the obvious answer. Past that, I would say Garrett Wilson. I did not expect him to adjust as quickly as he did. So I'd say Garrett Wilson. Defense, I think Sauce is chalk, but can you expect how good he's been playing? Probably not. Past that, even Quinn Williams, like that, I expect him to be a top 5 interior defensive line this year. I hope for it. I didn't expect it. I think that's a good answer. And I think my real answer for real surprise is Quan. While I really liked his film when I was doing that review, I was very impressed by him. I didn't expect him to be playing as well as he has been. So I'd say Quan, Garrett Wilson, and I guess Greg Zuerlein. We talk about special teams. I don't know. Should the Jets let ABT choose? I went over this before. It's a really hard position to kind of tackle, because you leave him at right tackle. What do you do with Max Mitchell? Do you left tackle? That's Dwayne Brown's spot. Right guard, Herbig's in there now. So I think the Jets probably want to move him back to guard. That's what they drafted him to be. That's where they ideally want him to play. And the Jets approached him to ask him if he would be comfortable moving to tackle. They kind of left it up to him apparently. So I think ideally they want to move him back to guard. But I could see them maybe letting him choose. But what if he comes out in the next couple of weeks against better edge rushers, against Rashawn Gary, Preston Smith, and struggles a little bit? You don't let him choose. He probably goes back to guard. Did you see Zach's PFF grade? Yeah, we kind of shit on PFF. I shit on PFF a lot. I know that they graded him high in the pocket. I know we discussed this PFF, but it's nice to see a huge jump. PFF is nice when they give us good grades, of course. Do you think we see any quality record time on the field this year? Towards the end of the year, I think you see him more, but I don't see it being a lot of time. High CPA. Huff is our second best edge rusher. Edge rusher, sure. Rusher, no. Rusher, no. So, anything else in the chat? Let me know. I don't know if Matt McCormick was in here, but he was the guy. And literally the only reason I got this, I told you, is because I said that if the Jets, and this is because I'm at 7% or 6% of my phone now, so my phone is dying rapidly because of hosting StreamYard. But I told Matt that I would get a Winnie the Pooh costume and wear it to the Bears game if the Jets were 3-2 and or better. So I'm not going to put it on, but I wanted to show you the hat, at least, which is going to be, I'm going to go to the Bears game with, I don't know if you could see it properly. I can't really see the head, but I'll be going in that. Hopefully I don't get jumped, but it's like a full kind of like pajama bodysuit thing. So that's going to be interesting. There's going to be some pictures taken. Again, pray that I did not get jumped, but I did promise it, and I am a man of my words. Did I bet the Jets would be 3-2 after 5 games? I did not, and that's why I said that. And I was rooting for it. I was rooting for wearing the Pooh costume. So I think I'm wearing the Pooh costume with an Elijah Moore jersey over it, but pray for me that I don't get jumped. Again, phone is dying. I'm really, really sorry for losing the chat. I know there's a bunch of good stuff in there. I'm going to go watch it back just to, I'm going to wear a Elijah Moore jersey, but it's still like let's see if you guys can see it. By the way, this room is a freaking mess, and my whole house is getting redone. But can you see? It's like it's like the little head. Close out the stream. You guys at least deserve the Pooh Bear at the end. But with that being said, I will see you guys next week. Again, apologize for losing chat, but Xfinity sucks. Appreciate everybody for being here, and I'll talk to you soon. Hopefully, I'll see some of you in Green Bay.